Welcome, Notre Dame fans, to our second post-game show of the year. I am Vince D'Addario. I'm the football analyst here at irishbreakdown.com. That is Brian Driscoll. He is the publisher at irishbreakdown.com. And we just got back from the stadium. He and I did the fan experience today. And we were in the stands. We were down in the bowl, watching this thing live, taking notes, doing our thing. Seeing people, which was awesome. We got a lot of, hey, man, Irish Breakdown, yeah. So that was cool, I have to say, although everybody recognized Brian and not me. But, you know.
Everybody, 3 people, Vince. It's not everybody.
It's all 3 of them, though, 100%.
Yeah.
No, I'm just playing, though. It was awesome to see people out and about and at the game and tailgating and all that. And that's where I shouldn't say that's where the excitement ended. But that's
now it's you fire everyone. Jack Cohn sucks.
Right.
This team's not a top 25 team. Look, there's going to be a lot we're going to talk about today, and a lot that has to get better.
Oh yeah.
And there are a lot of issues that this team has, and we're going to get into them. And I'm frustrated about a lot of things. But let's try to. This is a rational conversation, right? So we're not firing anybody, okay? I'm not letting my man Jason, okay, call into the show and put him on speaker because
we don't want to get shut down.
We will no longer be allowed to put videos on YouTube anymore. We're going to give you all a lot of chances to voice your frustrations because there's a lot to be frustrated about.
And thanks for the super chat, though, man.
Yes,
appreciate
Jason,
that.
very much.
There's another one too that's fairly early on, and I want to get to it
gone.
just before we start.
It's not.
I got it.
I don't have it. So
Jim McCarthy, man, thank you so much for the super chat. He was in there early with the super chat. So
but
to make sure that we.
But let's also try. We can vent. We're going to be frustrated. There's definitely things that got to get better. But let's also not turn this into an overreaction show. If that's what you're looking for, this ain't going to be it. If you want to vent, if you want to talk about frustrations, and there's a lot we're frustrated about. Yeah. This is the show, but this is not going to be a fire everyone and Jack Cohn sucks. And there are some things that suck right now. There are some things that suck right now, and we're going to talk about those. But Vince, just overall, let's just kind of start with your thoughts of the game. Because just big picture, we'll get into the offense, we'll get into the defense, just big picture kind of what did you see today?
Okay, big picture. If we're talking big picture, the big picture for me is now I'm officially worried about the future this season. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I don't, because going into this game, people remember that, during the week I said I'm not worried. My expectations are still the same, And I'm not saying my expectations are different per se. But I am saying that after watching the offensive line struggle as much as they did, my confidence level has dropped. It has, and I'm being honest. That is not me being crazy. That is not me overreacting.
There's no way you can say anything other than that, right?
Yeah, I am genuinely concerned about the future of this team this season because of what is happening on offensive line.
Sorry, Jason is out of control. He's mad at me too because I've been ignoring his text for the last hour because I've just been so busy. So he's upset. He's upset. Sorry, but anyway, continue, Vince.
I'm not happy either.
I thought that was funny.
Yeah, no, it's great. There's another super chat. You might as well throw it up.
Willie Watson Weatherburger. Okay, that's freaking awesome. By the way, what has Tosh Baker been doing for the last 12 months? If that's what it looks like now. And that's going to be a lot of what we're going to talk.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yeah, it sure is. So anyway, offensive line, it's a problem. And the post-game comments by Brian Kelly worry me because he does not address it as a problem. He is ignoring the problem, in my opinion. Okay. And that is just a fact. He flat out said there is nothing wrong with the offensive line. Right. He said that that's not something that we're worried about. And I saw a couple of comments down there about moving Jared Patterson to left tackle. They're not going to do that. No. He flat out said that in the press conference.
And we got a couple super chats here real quick, and I just want to throw them up. We're going to get to these, right? These are good topics of conversation. I just want to let John A1, what's the first team? I have to watch the first 2 games.
Sure.
Chief Brody says defense was all right until the fourth quarter. Offense was nightmare throughout because of the offensive line. We're going to get to all this stuff, but I did want to recognize these super chats because these are very legitimate questions. That's a legitimate question.
Yes.
Chief Brody's wasn't a question, it was a comment. It's a very honest comment. I mean, against Toledo. And again, Mike, you're talking to a guy and me. You predicted a blowout. I said it was going to be a more competitive game. I did not see freaking 3-point win, right?
Sure.
I mean, this was unacceptable.
Absolutely.
And you know, so I want to just get these out there because a lot of this stuff is very, look, it's understandable. I mean, we're going to address this topic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're going to get to that.
Well, defensively, they gave up 6 points until the last couple of drives.
Right.
Okay. And we were talking about it, right? Brian and I sat right next to each other in the stand. We're actually having conversations with the people around us as well. The defense wasn't the problem, right? They gave up 6 points. Offense gave up 10. All right. The strip sack and the pick 6, 10 points, just like that. Okay. So I was fine with the defense. Yes, they gave up a few big plays, but again, we've been telling you from the start that that's probably going to happen. Big plays against this defense. Now, do we want them to happen? Of course not. But they set them up for those first 3 field goals. Big plays. Okay. They should not have given up 29 points. They should not have. And I know, Brian was saying how this offense is bad. I was not impressed with the Toledo offense. Now, I was impressed with the fact that, with some of their adjustments, maybe in the second half, but the Notre Dame defense dominated this offense. They did. They did, in my opinion, till the end. And so, I'm okay with the defense. But again, one of my keys to the game, they needed to play a complete game. They didn't do that. They didn't play a complete game, right? And frankly, the only All-American you have, right? That's a line from a movie. The only All-American you have didn't play very well on defense, right? A defensive All-American.
And your All-American on offense didn't play. Had both of them. Pretty bad moments too. 2 of them,
and neither one of them played exceptionally well. And so that is troubling. That's troubling to me. So again, my overall big picture is that now I'm officially worried about where this team is going to go.
Part of me wants to say, hey, it's early yet and it's still 2 games, but the reality is you needed late game stuff to happen to beat 2 teams that just aren't that good.
Late game heroics
compared to where you should be at Notre Dame. And
they should have lost that game.
And they almost lost last week's game. And that's the troubling thing, Vince, is that you yes, I've said that these teams are better than they were last year. Yes, that Florida State's better than they were last year. It shouldn't have been a 3-point game. Yes, I think Toledo's a good football team, but this shouldn't have been a 3-point game.
Correct.
This should have been a game you pulled away in the fourth quarter and won by 3 touchdowns. And then when in both sides of the ball tried to give this game away. That was the frustrating thing. It's like Notre Dame's defense kept trying to, kept them in the game, and then the offense finally steps up, and as soon as that happens, the defense just bam, right back down the field. And and that's the thing is like you say, hey, well, you're 2-0. Yeah, you're 2-0 because you have better players than the teams that you just beat. That's it. And that's what this game. And Kelly kind of talked about that a little bit. But the fact of the matter is, Vince, is that this is now 2 games in a row where the only reason you won is because you have better players.
Correct. Yes.
And that's
yes.
It's early. It's only game 2. Hey, it's only game 2 for Toledo as well. It was also the opener for Florida State. You can't use being on the road as an example. Oh, short week. It's Toledo. It's correct. Toledo. Now, I mean, when you look at some things to take away from this, there's also some good things to take away from this because pre-2017, they would have be 0-2 right now. And that is a positive, right?
Sure.
They would be 0-2 right now. And when you look at – because I guess here's where my concern – Vince, if the stuff that we were looking at was like correctable and Jack – we'll get into Jack Cohn. He made he made some plays today that were big time late. He made a horrible mistake in the second quarter.
Horrible.
The strip sack was not on him. Right. That's not on him.
No.
But him getting impacted by the pressure was on him. The pick 6 was on him 100%.
Can you explain that? him getting impacted by the pressure. Please explain that.
It was obvious that he knew that he wasn't going to have time to throw. It was so obvious he allowed that to help her to impact his. I mean, he was rushing his reads. He wasn't taking shots. He was tucking it and running it a little bit before he should have. It was clear. And when we talk about the offense, we'll get into a little bit more with that. But the point is, when you look at this game, it was nice to see that when the game was on the line, they were able to make plays to win on both sides of the ball, and that is a positive. But the reason that I'm not going to just sit here and say, "Hey, they're 2-0," there's some things to clean up, because there's some things that I don't know if these are things that you can clean up in 2 weeks.
Well, but
that's the problem.
The reason you say that, and the reason you're not saying, well, they got the win, that's the most important thing, which at the end of the day, it is the most important thing. You're still 2-0. I get all of that, and I agree with that part, okay? The problem is the offensive line against Florida State, there were problems, okay? The offensive line against Toledo, they were worse than they were against Florida State. And the dudes that they were going up against Florida State were better than the dudes they were going up against Toledo, period. And nobody who knows anything about football, is going to say that the Toledo defensive line and linebackers were better than the Florida State linemen and linebackers. It's not even close. Night and day difference, and Notre Dame played worse today at home than they did on the road at Florida State. Mm-hmm. That's, for me, that's the problem. Now.
We got a super chat, a couple more super chats coming in. One from Matt Romero. Coach, this team is reminiscent of the 2010 Broncos with Tebow quarterback, and that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. No. I don't miss having to sweat out each game to the bitter end. Please don't thank me. I got paid to watch the game from a lazy boy. Hey, I'm going to still thank you. Just because you're living the good life doesn't mean I still can't thank you. I absolutely appreciate you very, very much. Old Grim says, I don't see the O-line reaching. I see more lookout blocks. Look out, here they come. 100% right. This I said this in my breakdown, Vince, and let's just dive into the offense. Let's just do it, because all these things we're going to keep talking about big picture are leading back to these things.
They are absolutely.
This, in my opinion, was the worst offensive performance I've ever seen from a Notre Dame offensive line.
We're talking about the line, not overall. The
line, because I see a team that. You're playing a MAC school, right? And when we were talking about Toledo before the game, we were talking about Toledo having a team that was a good offensive team.
Sure.
You know, look, I predicted Toledo to score 24 points. They scored, what, 22? 22 on the defense, 22. Right? And you could say that they had 10 points off turnovers. You could really say they scored 19 offensive points. I think it was
10, but I mean, they could have shut down the field goal, but they had really good field position, et cetera. So, tomato. The
fact is, this is just not a defense that should have done what they did today.
Right.
And it was you got whipped physically, and they got physically, mentally, and technically whipped by Toledo. Toledo was not bringing many guys. Mm-hmm. They got out-coached. Their defensive staff had Jeff Quinn's number in a big way today. And there really wasn't anything Tommy Rees could do from a play calling standpoint, because when you can't block, you can't run block, and you can't pass pro.
Correct.
Well, what are you supposed to do?
Right.
You know, it was embarrassing, to be honest with you. And again, there's a difference between, like, this performance made the Ball State performance look good. That's how bad.
I never thought people, you know, even Brian Kelly brought up Ball State, you know, during the press conference. I was like, come on, man, that is not going to happen. There's no way that they're going to have a repeat performance of Ball State. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And
Jim McCarthy, thank you very much for the super chat. Appreciate that very, very much.
Thank you, Jim.
Vince, it was the things that saw to me today were troubling. It was no physicality whatsoever.
Nope.
None. And then Brian Kelly after the game, talking about the offensive line. Thank you. My wife just came downstairs to bring me a water and a Mountain Dew, and I asked her for a water, and she's looking at me like I'm an idiot because when I asked her for the water, I didn't see that there were 4 on the corner of my desk. And she's renovating my office area, so she's been doing that all day. So she's like ready to go take a nap. So I appreciate her very much. Did you hear that by chance?
I heard it. Go
my
Irish.
Wife just yelled, "Go Irish!" So to me, when I watched it, Vince, it's one thing to have Brian Kelly said, look, there's a lot of young guys there. Bull crap.
There's not.
There's one, and that was Tosh Baker, and then Michael Carmody, then Tosh Baker. Zeke Correll is a junior in college,
right?
Who has started 2 games for this year and looked way worse to the last 2. I love Zeke, so please, this isn't even a Zeke problem. This is clearly a coaching problem because it's happened across the board. There was at least, how many times did I look at you today and say Zeke Correll didn't touch a soul?
At least 4 or 5, and that's only
did
because
not
that
touch a soul.
Him specifically.
Vince did not touch. How does an offensive lineman not? And only one of them was on a screen.
Correct.
Because sometimes you run it, but there was a play where they were running down the field and he was sprinting just down the middle of the field. There's a safety over here to block, and he's just running right down the middle of the field like he has no clue what he's doing.
Nothing.
There was run plays where he's like pass pro, where he's looking around like when nobody blocking, like 2 dudes are running by him. He has no clue what he's doing.
And I love
How does a guy that's been playing that long do that?
Right.
Kane Madden was awful today.
Terrible.
Awful. Jarrett Patterson had his moments. I'll say this. Jarrett and Josh had some good moments. Jarrett Patterson and Josh Lugg. The touchdown run, both of them had great blocks. Josh got a great push outside. If Josh doesn't dominate that guy on that outside play, it gets blown up because Cade Madden's blocking it, and he stopped his feet.
Yeah.
And the guy comes off. If Josh doesn't push that guy out as wide as he did, which allowed Kyron to get way outside, that guy comes off and makes that tackle for a 2-yard gain.
Kane blocked him just long enough for Williams to get through.
But only because of how wide it was.
Correct.
And then Jarrett had a great second-level block down the field on that play too.
Right.
Outside of that, it was terrible. And it's bad tech. And here's the thing. It's bad technique. You've got a 5th-year senior. You've got a 6th-year senior, a 5th-year senior, a senior, and a junior, all with starting experience in your starting offensive line, and you're going to tell me it's a young group? That was Brian Kelly did not say one negative thing about his offensive line following the game.
And he actually pushed back when somebody even just approached the topic, you know what I mean, of offensive line. I mean, he pushed back hard. And you said it, and I'll say it again. We were in the car listening to it on the way back to our homes, and you said, man, offensive line is the new Ian Book.
Yeah, because he'll never, no matter how bad it plays, he'll never say anything. And Brad Gonzalez, thank you for the super chat. Hi, Vincent, Brian, and Vince, recent viewer, but first-time commenter. O-line was atrocious. Thoughts on Buckner, quarterback, given awful O-line play? I promise you we will get to that, but I wanted to get your super chat up, and I appreciate it very much.
Very much.
Brandon says, what are your thoughts on BK in the press conference stating he refuses to put Patterson at left tackle and wants to coach up Tosh, Alt, etc.? Says they don't need JP at left tackle. And then Spanky also says, Brandon, thank you for that super chat. Spanky also says, so I said Patterson to left guard and not LT. Crow has to go back to center or he's worthless. I don't think moving him to center fixes anything. His head is not there. I mean, if you can't do that at left guard, you're not going to be able to play at center.
Right. Because you have to have more than that at center.
But I want to go back to Brandon's super chat because this is the concerning thing for me. We have seen this before with Brian Kelly. And it has tended to be with coaches that were more his people he's had a long time relationship with, where he kind of puts his head in the sand and refuses to admit that things need to change. And I'm not talking about firing his offensive line coach in the middle of the game. I made a joke on the message board today where I put a thing. I said, hey Brian, this is Harry, or hey Harry, this is Brian. Brian Kelly. What's your price for coming back to coach my team tomorrow? My offensive line tomorrow, right? And I mean, it's never going to happen. But the point being this, Vince, is that if he's in that thing where he'll push, and this is what happened. And the reason I'm concerned is when this happened in 2019 with Ian Book, where he was playing poorly, really for much of the beginning of the season. It wasn't until they already had 2 losses and they were no longer in the playoff conversation that Ian Book started doing anything against bad teams. And instead of saying, hey, we're going to try to get Phil Dracovic in the game like they did with Tyler Buckner today, it was double down, bash him in the media, pretend that we don't see what we all see. Right. And that's what this offensive line press conference sounded. This is what the press conference sounded like today. About the offensive line. Now, let's let him get in the film room. He may say, hey, look, I got to get in the film room, see what's going on, and then we'll check it out.
That would have been a better answer, though.
Maybe Monday he'll have a different conversation.
That would have been a better answer.
But the reality is that what we saw today, this is a great super chat by Tommy Guns. The line is full of a bunch of winners, guys. They just are. I love it. That's beautiful, Tommy.
That is fantastic. Well played.
That's great. And DP's also had a super chat, and we appreciate you. It says, hey, Coach, what's up with the defense having 7-10 guys off the line of scrimmage? I promise you we will get to that too. We will. But I want to try to stay on track on this one. Because there
was one more too. I want to make sure we hit before it disappears.
Okay.
It was by Lawrence Adams.
Here we go. Lawrence Adams says, hope fading. Thank you for the super chat, Lawrence. Hope fading.
Absolutely.
O-line not good. D inconsistent. Coach is shaking my head. I don't know. Team energy not good. And that part right there that he just said about the team energy, that was concerning.
I agree.
There was not a lot of fire today, even at the end of the game. I mean, part of me says this looked like a tired team coming off of a short week in Florida. It was a human week. I'm going to give them that.
Okay.
I'm going to give them that. So I want to wait one more week before I get concerned about that.
Sure.
Okay. Defense don't look like a top 10 team now. 2 QBs, happy we won, but yes, happy we won, but I'd rather be Notre Dame is than where Ohio State is. Though.
Look, everything he just said right here,
he nailed it.
Sums up everything.
He nailed it.
Right
he
now.
nailed it. I mean, he nailed it, Vince.
That's absolutely.
But here's the concerning thing. I don't feel like this is this going to be the thing? Here we go. AST 1 2 3 2 1. Can you, off the top of your head, name a Division I coach who has underperformed more than Jeff Quinn so far this year? No, I can't. The problem is
not a D1 coach at the level that Notre Dame needs to be at. No, I don't.
Right.
You know, and I mean, I don't follow the UConns of the world and things like that. So whatever. But up here, where Notre Dame is, where they're supposed to be, because right now we consider them a top tier 2 team. No, the answer is no.
And here's the thing: people talk about Notre Dame's rebuilding, all that kind of stuff. I'm sorry, when your nickname is O-line U, you don't rebuild. For all the people talking about recruiting, you got a preseason All-American at right guard. You got a borderline top 100 recruit at right tackle. You got a bunch of top 100 recruits battling at left tackle. You got a top 100 recruit at left guard, and you can't put a line together that can outplay Toledo.
Yeah.
Jonathan Jones making plays all over the field. He wasn't even good enough to play at Notre Dame, apparently. You know what I mean? Making plays in the run game.
Good. That was a devastating play to Notre Dame, but you and I both looked at each other and we're like, yeah, good for him. You know what I mean?
Because I like Jonathan. Yeah,
absolutely. So I will say that.
But the point being is that they've now regressed in game 2, and this is now 2 games in a row, Vince, where they got physically whipped up front. Having young guys, if it was just about being young, the issue would be mistakes. Technique mistakes, turning guys loose. That's not picking up a corner fire, right? Like that's the kind of thing that can happen when you've got 4 guys starting together. You're got a new left tackle in there. All that stuff can happen, right? But that's young guy mistakes, cohesion. The problem, and this is what you and I talked about before the season. The problem is that if you're getting physically whipped, that's the issue. You could not move Toledo off the ball.
Correct.
How does that happen? Right? And we're using the term O-line U obviously to make a point, because when Harry Hiestand was here, they were. And they're not now. I mean, that to me, Vince, this is look, you could say we're being emotional, whatever the case may be, but look, I've watched Toledo play. Right? I watched Toledo play. They gave up 147 rushing yards to Norfolk State, who couldn't throw the ball.
Correct.
I mean, did Notre Dame get to 147 yards?
132.
So Norfolk State had more yards and more yards per rush against Toledo than Notre Dame.
169 if you take away the sacks, but 132 is the number.
Well, Toledo, I believe that Toledo had some sacks against Norfolk State as well.
Okay.
Let's look here. Nope, 1 sack for -8 yards. So close. So Notre Dame was on par.
Okay, so they're on par with
Norfolk State was.
Can we just hit end right now?
Right.
I'm done. Like, come on, man. That's
right.
It's not okay.
And real sports talk with Alex. We'll get to this. Okay, we'll get to this.
Talk about that for sure.
Yep. AST. I was horrified. Our 3 deep probably has more 4 stars than Toledo has on their team, but they still whipped us in the trenches. Unacceptable. No excuses. And you're absolutely right. That's the stuff. Another chat down here from my man Cham Joe. Why are traits important for the players, but the coaches aren't held to the same standard? It's clear the O-line is playing with zero heart or proper technique. That's on Jeff Quinn. Bam.
Boom.
I mean, he nailed it.
Yep.
Nailed it. That is but that's the problem. That's the problem. Tulane hung up 69 on an FCS team today, right? I mean, I'm just saying that, and I'm not talking about the offensive coordinator. I'm talking about the O-line coach, that is there. That was at Notre Dame sometimes, but back to events. When you get whipped up front by Toledo, that when Toledo wants it more than you O-line where's like, if I'm Quentin Nelson, if I'm Michael McGlinchey, if I'm Alex Bars, if I'm Robert Hainsey, if I'm Lee Meichenberg, I'm calling that. What in the heck is going on?
Right.
What are you guys doing?
Going right to the group text, man. Like, come on, fellas. Like, what? Okay, for example, Notre Dame's running a stretch play to the right, and Josh Lugg is pass blocking.
Yes.
He's giving ground when you're supposed to be sealing the edge, physically moving the line of scrimmage up, and he's giving ground on a pass block, allowing that defensive end to just blow it up. It makes no sense to me why that's occurring.
Right.
It's that kind of stuff. Right. It's
right.
No movement. It's the pass blocking wasn't even good today.
No, it's terrible.
Right? And a lot of times we're like, well, with Jeff Quinn, the pass blocking is usually good because the run blocking, they're not aggressive enough. They're
not doing anything good.
The technique of pass block. I want to get up and show people how to pass block, but you take a step back with your outside foot. Yes, you give ground. You don't hop. I wish I had a nickel for every time I heard a high school offensive line coach say, you can't hop, you have to step. You have to step back. That way you keep your base.
Right.
If you hop, both of your feet are off the ground, you have no base. And
what was happening was Toledo was coming off the ball, getting under the pads and Notre Dame line, just driving them. And there were times where the tackles were getting beat off the edge, and then Jack Cohn steps into the pocket, and one of the guards gets beat, and it's right in his face. And it was –
It was so much more beneficial to be at the game and watch the offensive line because it wasn't the camera following the ball and not being able to see the offensive line finish. I was watching a lot of the offensive line today, and it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing. I'm sorry, and it needs to get cleaned up. And if they don't clean that up, this is going to be a season that we're all going to want to forget.
Vince, I want you. Demetrius Rex just made this comment. I want you to comment on this because when you and I were in the car driving home, and he made this comment, you got a little fired up.
He says Kelly said the run game is a personnel issue, not a line issue. What the heck? What does that even mean?
Right?
Is it the personnel on the line?
What he's saying? What I took that to mean is because he talked about making plays. He's basically pretending that no, we're okay running the ball, but we've got so many playmakers that we're getting the ball outside. No, you're getting the ball outside because you can't run the ball. Here's what happened in the game, and I would encourage you to go back and watch it. Early in the game, Notre Dame, just first drive, they're just right down the field.
Yeah.
Jack Cohn's doing RPOs.
Right.
Kevin Dillon, big super chat. Appreciate you. Jacob Salyer, we also got your super chat, by the way. We'll get to that when we get to the defense. But Kevin Dillon also with the big super chat. Tons of technical issues, the O-line, and long-term. Tyler doesn't erase that.
Bingo.
That is a great comment. We're going to get to the quarterback thing here in a second. Because I understand where people are coming from. The thought process is sound, but it doesn't quite work that way.
Right.
But we'll get to that. But Kevin, that's a great comment and appreciate the super chat.
Spot on, man.
So here's the thing. So you look at that first drive and they're running RPOs and Cohn's pulling it and throwing it out and just looking great. I forgot to bring my notes in, but they were just hitting those RPOs just like bam, 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 bam. And it just looked smooth and efficient. And, it was the thing of beauty. After about the second or third series, maybe it might have been, it was pretty early on. Toledo was like, they realized that they're getting in Notre Dame's face, with 4-man pressures. And they had this really nice delayed blitz where a couple times they were able to get pressures. Once the running, and Brian K talked about this, they were check releasing with the backs. And once they would check release, the ball, the guy would come. Mm-hmm. They're going to have an answer for that because teams are going to do that more and more and more with running backs as good as Notre Dame has. And Jason actually, the funny thing about this is he was yelling at Kelly after the Cotton Bowl against Clemson, where he was like yelling at Kelly as he's coming off the field. But thank you for that, Jason. So what Toledo did was, okay, we're dominating them up front. Notre Dame could not get any pressure, any kind of run game going. It was clear early, like it was clear almost immediately. Even on that first drive, Vince, it was clear that Notre Dame was not getting any push up front. Even on the first drive, that was obvious.
Correct.
And so, so Notre Dame gets the ball, second drive, they're coming down. They're in Toledo territory again on drive 2. You look at the second drive, 1 yard run, 2nd and 9. He hits an RPO for a 7-yard gain, 3rd and 2 conversion, 1st and 10, 2 yards, and then hurry. And then he gets a ball to Braden Lindsey for 18 yards, gets a ball to Kevin Austin for 9 yards, and then they run a corner fire that gets Jack Cohn. And it was clearly a mistake. I don't know whether it was Jack made the mistake by not sliding the protection into the boundary, whether it was his mistake was not seeing the blitz, because a guy I've said this during the summer. If a guy comes on your upside, your throwing side shoulder, you can't see that.
There's no way.
And it was a corner fire. Now his mistake could have been not setting the protection the right way.
Sure.
Right. It could have been a running back mistake. It could have been an O-line communication mistake. But the fact of the matter is it hurt you. That's about when Toledo realized they can't run the ball on us. And then the next drive, Notre Dame comes out, 3-yard gain, no push, 2-yard gain, no push, 3rd and 9, Jack Cohn gets sacked. And it was a sack. It was an immediate sack. And Toledo was like, they can't protect the quarterback. So what they did is they just came up and did the same thing Florida State did and said, we're just going to come up and we're not going to let you get those RPOs. We're not going to let you get those short shots. But they also played more cover 2 or more 2 high, whereas Florida State played 1 high. So Notre Dame could just take those one-on-ones on the outside. And so what you saw in the game, Vince, was they basically said, you're not going to run RPOs on us. You're not going to throw a quick game on us. If you're going to beat us, you're going to have to throw the ball down the field. We're not going to make the same mistake Florida State did, though. We're going to play 2 safeties. And the reason they could do that is because Toledo was getting pressure with 4 guys.
Right, exactly.
4 guys.
And I want to clarify here. We've talked in the past, and we've got some super chats to get to with some great comments. In the past, we've talked about not taking deep shots, the unwillingness to take deep shots, but the availability was there. They just weren't taking them. And I want to get FUSCND88. Thank you for the super chat. He says, if one of us in the chat room is quote unquote nailing what the problem is, then why in the world isn't one of the best coaches in the nation seeing the problem and resolving it immediately? For example, Urban Meyer, Saban, etc.
Yeah. And it's not just one person in the chat room. It's many people in the chat
multiple people in the chat room. Andrew had one that I think we missed. I want to make sure we hit that. And then
here we go. Andrew Sokolowski. Is there a video of Cohn getting his finger popped back in place right before throwing the game-winning TD? Love him. Will the line get it figured out? That's a great question. That's a great question. And then we had another super chat down here from Neil Wachter.
Yes.
The 2 glaring issues were offensive line not moving anyone and defensive backs blowing coverages. Mobile QB can cover, but costs us in a pass game, and that's absolutely right. And thank you for the super chat too, Neil.
We'll get to it wasn't all of the secondary. I will say that.
We'll get to that.
Absolutely.
So back to this game plan basically is the fact that Toledo could figure out, and Florida State did the same thing. They can't run the ball on our. I mean, they were in 5 to 6 man boxes, and Notre Dame could get no movement in the run game.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, they weren't getting the linebackers just flying downhill because and we were talking about this, like even on the plays where they were getting a decent push. It took all 5 guys to get 3-4 guys off the ball, and they couldn't get up to the linebackers.
So the linebackers are roaming free.
And so linebackers are flying downhill, blowing stuff up. And then Kyron Williams missed several holes. And part of that, I want us to be somewhat sympathetic to Kyron, because part of that is I feel like he's going through the same thing that Jack Cohn's going through, which is they're getting to me so quickly. I'm anticipating having to bounce, and now he's bouncing everything.
Right, because there was one play to the right where Lugg had pushed his guy outside, and there was a hole, and he tried to go outside of Lugg. And that's, for lack of a better term, I don't want to offend anybody. It's like PTSD from a running back standpoint. He's like, I'm getting nailed in here.
Like you're punch drunk. I
gotta go this way. I gotta get out of there.
Your body's trained to, right. I'm gonna have to make somebody miss.
Which is what Cohn was doing. He knew he had no time, so he was locking in on his first read a lot because he knew I'm gonna get hit. right? And that was the problem. It wasn't Jack Cohn just locking in on his guys. Now, look, I am not giving him a pass for that pick six. I'm not.
And there were some other times where he just started looking at and that can't happen.
Correct.
You can't do that.
He has to get better
when you're that experienced, you can't do it. I understand it, but you still can't do it. I've been there. I had a terrible O-line in college, and it's impossible because then all of a sudden you're like, well, if you don't anticipate it, that's when you start getting strip sacked.
Yes.
And so that's the problem is that when you get into these situations is you have to try to be better than that.
Yes.
And here's another chat from the Spanky 412, my guy Jason. This is the best set of offensive weapons we've had since the beginning of 2005, before Rama's injury. And yet he's going to ruin it with this offensive line. Just give me 18 and 19 O-lines. They weren't great, but not terrible. And he's absolutely right.
Well, we talked about it. This line doesn't have to be amazing.
Right. It's so much worse than I thought.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's like we talked about this. There's going to be growing pains.
Yes.
And in the car on the way back, we were trying to like, look, I'm going to have to get him out of here. Sorry.
We have a troll.
Yeah, we have some trolls.
All right. I'm still up at the top. I don't know why.
It's all good.
Yeah.
So, when you get into a situation like this, you cannot have this happen on your offensive line. You just can't. You can't get physically whipped. You can't regress to the level they're regressing. You just can't. You just can't. And all the excuses in the world, short week, this, that, and the other. It's Toledo.
Exactly.
Right. It's Toledo.
Absolutely.
If you're sitting here mad at me because I'm being critical and you're talking about it's game 2, it's freaking Toledo. If you have to justify that what you saw today from the offensive line is okay against Toledo, then that's a you problem, not a me problem.
Right.
And that is just, Vince, that's just unacceptable to me.
Agreed. No, I agree.
But that kind of I want to transition a little bit to part of my frustration is back to Spanky's super chat.
Mm-hmm.
This is why they're 2-0. Right? This is why they're 2-0. And Brian Kelly made a comment after the game, Vince. It was hilarious. Somebody asked him, was this part, was putting Tyler Buckner in the game part of the game plan? And he said, well, I just thought we were having trouble getting the run game going, and I thought that we needed to spark. And he made it seem like that wasn't part of the game plan. I was told last night that Tyler Buckner was going to play.
Right.
That's why I talked about, what to look for. I made a comment of, hey, we may see Tyler Buckner early. But he just can't help himself sometimes. And it worked out pretty good. It did work out pretty good. I just give Tommy Reese more of the credit for that than I do Brian Kelly.
Absolutely.
But that also it also exposed a little bit of a flaw in the offense from a scheme standpoint. What they did on that first play, because what was the one thing I was saying to you and I were saying it, in agreement, is early in the game was Toledo's doing the same thing that Florida State was doing. They are crashing the backside edge, knowing that Jack Cohn's not going to pull the ball.
Correct.
They're going to have to fix that because you've been telling us all summer and all offseason, all fall camp that Jack Cohn's a better runner than people think. He's going to have to pull the ball and hold it on a read zone. It's going to have to. And when they brought Tyler Buckner in, I loved the fact that they went right to a read zone and it got him out of there. And that was smart and then they ran a bootleg that he ends up tucking it, running it for more yards. And it was nice to be able to get out of the pocket and do some of those kind of things. And that was smart, and it kind of sparked them, and they get down and, you get a long touchdown. And I think that was part of the reason Kyron Williams was able to get free for that 43-yard touchdown. It was great blocking, but also you kind of couldn't flow to the ball as hard because you had to worry about 12 pulling it.
And that's why you run read zone. It's to keep defenses honest. That's why you do it.
But if you don't ever pull the ball or have a schematic counter to that, there's got to do something to that. And that was present last week, and it was present again this week. And that's going to have to be something schematically that's going to have to get fixed because you're going to have, hey, Jack, pull it. There's a couple times they ran outside zone, and Jack he could pull it and run for 8-10 yards. If you just do that 3-4 times, they're going to, or you do something where you run it and then maybe bring a tight end on a drag route behind it or something like that. Or maybe you go 12 personnel to the right, run outside zone towards your 12 personnel, and maybe have your twins backside and run some kind of tunnel screen behind it. You got to do something to slow that backside edge down, Vince.
And he did pull at least once or twice. After Tyler had the success with it, he did pull it. I can't remember. I remember one specifically, but at least now he's pulling a little bit.
Yeah, he's going to have to do it more.
Yeah, and absolutely, no question.
But there's also some schematic things that they're going to have to do to that too, because if they can get it, and this is, you want to know, like, so David said, and what about the good news? The good news is that this is a very athletic, talented football team on offense that also has some issues. Here Jacob Saylor says, after today, thanks for the super chat, Jacob. After today, there's not a single game I feel we are safe in. Games like Virginia Tech and Purdue that felt safe aren't anymore. Wisconsin humiliated us. First of all, Wisconsin scored 10 points on Penn State in the opener. Okay. Wisconsin going to humiliate Notre Dame. All right. But I understand the frustration.
I do.
The fact of the matter is that Notre Dame has really good weapons. When you get to that last drive, I loved Tommy Reese's aggressiveness. The first call, Vince, you looked at me, right? And you said Tommy came out and just said F it, is what Vince said to me. He didn't say F it, he actually said F it.
Yeah.
But when you look at that call, I loved that call, Vince.
Yeah. And what I meant by that, just so what I meant by that was, hey, F it, my guys are better than your guys. And if you're going to go one-on-one on me on the outside, that's where I'm going, period. And that's what he did. And you then pointed out that it was schematically sound because not only did he have guys going vertical, but he also had the safe route underneath.
Yeah. So what they did is you had Kevin Austin backside, and he ran Kevin on the go route. We saw him throw the go route. He made a great throw. Kevin made a great catch. But he also ran an angle route, like it was a free release angle route, where basically if they drop. Because what can happen in that situation is if you call 4 verts and they play aggressive, you got them, which is what happened. They were aggressive. They thought they could get the rush. Jack hit the drop and threw it like he did against Florida State last week, and he nailed it. But what he also had was if they bail, we have an angle route. An angle route is basically you kind of release to your right to the, and then angle back behind the defensive line and you hit it over top. So if they bail to protect against the verts, you dump it off and Kyron catches it with room to run. Mm-hmm. It's a really well-designed play call.
It's how you defeat like a prevent defense. Really.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And but what happened is they weren't in a prevent defense. They were, and this was actually smart by Toledo. It's the only chance they had. They had to stick with what got them there. And what got them there was aggressive coverage and get to the quarterback. Well, Jack gets to the top of his drop and he just, bam, he let it go to gorgeous throw. Yeah. And then I looked at you at that time, or it was about 2 plays. I looked at you and I said, the middle of the field is wide open.
Yep. That's exactly what you said.
And the very next play drops back. And after that first throw, then Toledo went cover 2. And on that play, I think it was Lindsey ran a go route and Jack gets his eyes on the safety and he looks out, gets the safety off the hash. As soon as the safety gets off the hash, Jack comes right back inside on the seam route for a touchdown. That's why Jack Cohn needs to be the starting quarterback.
Correct.
Because of those kind of things. And you can say
it was the play just before that too, when he banged it to Mayer at the pass interference.
Right. It
was the same thing, right? We knew that that's where he was going to go, and it was a great read to go there.
Right.
That guy was riding him like a pony, a show pony. I mean, he was all over him. And but it was a great throw. That was the throw. And then the very next play, you hit Mayer because they're afraid to touch him.
Right. Yeah. And M. Kallstrom says in 2018, we started with close wins over inferior opponents. Quarterback change made a big difference. This is not that. Way more concerned now than I was then. And I agree with you. And
this
look,
is not that. Yeah.
This is not that. And let's first talk about what Tyler Buckner brought to the table, because this is exactly why you and I have been saying all summer Tyler Buckner needs a package. And because he gives you a change of pace. You have to prepare now for 2 completely different types of quarterbacks.
Correct.
The reality is, however, is if you take a deep breath and look at this, is there are still limitations to Tyler Buckner's game that even he is going to eventually get exposed because of the offensive line if he has to play the whole game.
Right.
You need to have this change of pace. Eventually, this change of pace is going to result with him throwing the ball, right? But you need this change of pace because if you're playing teams if you're just getting your butt whooped with your front 4, you got to be able to do something. And right now, there's really not a lot for Tommy Rees to go to. And Toledo is not prepared for Tyler Buckner. The next opponents will be. Mm-hmm. They will be more prepared for that. At the end of the day, Jack Cohn still has to be your starting quarterback, because we saw today when Jack Cohn gets time to throw, he's going to shred you.
Yes.
And that's what he did early, and that's what he did late. And he's got to make some better decisions too. I mean, he did not
perfect. No.
the pick six was bad. They baited him into that because that's what I was saying. Toledo was just even with less than a minute and a half, Toledo was not playing off. They were like, we're not going to give him time to throw the ball downfield because they knew he was going to throw it downfield.
Right.
And they sat and squat. He's sitting there thinking like, look, we're going to drop back. They're going to take and I'm just going to bang an out cut and we're going to get some yards and get this thing going. And he did not read it out. He just locked in on Mayer and he throws it out there and he threw it behind Mayer and the guy steps in front of it. And
it's a
takes
great play by the kid. I mean,
he can't make that kind of mistake. You can't, you're a veteran. You can't make that kind of mistake. But he bounced back and, and it didn't rattle him and he made the throws he needed to make. This needs to be, I hope, that this is part of their package now every week. Yeah. The Buckner thing. It needs to be part of their package every week.
The kid's dynamic with the ball in his hands. I will be the first one to say it. I think he's dynamic. You and I, again, all summer long, we're talking about the fact that, okay, your quarterback depth chart is Cone and Pine, then Buckner, but Buckner needs to have a package. Mm-hmm. And if Cone goes down, Pine is your guy, still with the Buckner package. That's what we have been saying since day one. And that hasn't changed. And they did it. They brought Buckner in as a change of pace, and he did a great job. Right. He did. But again, and I was texting one of my friends throughout the game. He's like, he needs to be our starter. He needs to be our starter. Pump the brakes on Buckner being the starter because he's limited, right? Mm-hmm. There's a reason, and somebody asked Kelly this after the game, right? Did you think about bringing Tyler Buckner in on the final drive? And Kelly's like, no. He's not our starter. Jack Cone gives us the best opportunity to score on that drive, and he did because that's not Tyler Buckner's game. You didn't have time for a 5-minute drive, right? You had to go fast, and you had to be able to push the ball downfield, make good decisions. Mm-hmm. That's who Jack Cone is right now. Now, can Tyler Buckner be that someday? Sure, but he's not that today, right? Use him for what he can do to help your team today. That's exactly what they did. And they were successful with it.
And if there comes a time down the road of this season where Tyler Buckner can do it all, then maybe you consider making a switch. I'm not opposed and the reason I say that is because Tyler Buckner is the future, right? That's why I ranked him as a 5-star recruit before his senior year got canceled. Sure. It's why I ranked him as a top 50 recruit. This is why we were so excited about him because he is the future. He's not the present. Correct. As the full-time guy. But again, it's the same thing I said about Phil Jacovic and Ian Book. If I'm going to say it then, I got to be consistent now. If the kid with the star potential becomes capable of running your offense completely, then you run your entire then you consider putting him in the game. I wholeheartedly believe that. But now's not that time. Right. That's the point. And you even saw in the second half a little bit too where what was the other thing that I said, Vince, I was calling for the whole game? The whole
wheel
game,
route by the running
route. I'm like, they got to run a wheel route. They got to get something that can be a big play quickly. And I was caught because, again, they were playing basically cover one, cover 2-man. And I said, they got to go to a wheel route. And then they finally did it with Buckner in the game. And I think it worked better. It was a savvy call by Tom Reese to go do it with Buckner in the game because they were going to overplay where they were keying on Buckner more.
100%.
And so you're able to hit that wheel route and great hustle by George Takis leading Chris Tyree in the end zone. And then Chris outran. It was a great play call by Tommy Reese.
Absolutely.
But I think that the combination of the two is going to be and the point is that what people are saying is, and I get it. And we got a couple super chats we'll get to, I promise. But people are saying that you need to put Buckner in the game because of the offensive line. And I'm sympathetic to that. I don't agree with it, but I understand where people are coming from because Buckner can make plays and he can escape and all. And you're right on. You're right. The way to protect against this bad of an offensive line, and you have to. Tommy Reese has to start preparing for it's always going to look like this. If it gets better, great, it gets better. But you at least have to be prepared for it to be this bad.
Right.
Especially with Purdue and Wisconsin and Cincinnati coming up.
Right.
But going to Tyler Buckner full-time is going to present you with some pass game limitations that are going to look a lot like your run game limitations now. And the reality is your best players, for the most part, are still pass catchers.
Correct. Absolutely.
And if you put Tyler Buckner in the game, you're going to gain some advantage in the run game, but you're going to lose the ability to maybe make some more pass game throws at the time. Now, that may change. And if at some point in time, Tyler Buckner is your best quarterback and does not most talented, He's clearly the most talented. That's never been a question.
I'm not doubting
but
that.
If he's your best quarterback, then you make the move. But that's not today. But I think this was a great opportunity to get him in there. It was a great timing of it. And maybe that's when Brian Kelly said, hey, let's put Tyler in. But they were planning to play Tyler today.
And you told me when we were driving to the game that it was going to be in the first half.
Right.
I mean, that's, based on your source, it was going to be in the first half. And so I wasn't in no way surprised when they brought him in. I wasn't surprised at all. Now, he was very successful. And I think that using him in the correct manner as a complement to what they're doing right now is fantastic. And they can use that even more, right? There's more stuff you can do out of that. Look, I want Tyler Buckner. There was a couple times where I was really hoping he was going to load up and just put it deep, right? Because there were times when Braden Lindsey was just wide open all day long. And after a while, he got sick of running go routes because he wasn't getting the ball. And I don't blame him. I get it, right? One of these times he's going to let one loose because people are going to be having their eyes in the backfield and somebody's going to be wide open. And Tyler Buckner absolutely has the arm to get it there, right? I'm just not ready for Tyler Buckner to be sitting in the pocket and going through reads. He's not there yet, right? So use Jack Cohn and what his strengths are, and then you use Tyler Buckner and what his strengths are, and that makes your offense better.
Right.
It's okay to use both. He doesn't have to be either or. It's not Doug Johnson or Flutie, right? It's with the Buffalo Bills. Remember that controversy? Right. Like, you can use both effectively. It's college. It's okay to use both, and I think that they will. And I think Tommy Rees is smart enough to do that. We got a few super chats. I definitely want to hit them.
It's going to be more like a 2006 Chris Leak, Tim Tebow thing than it is Brandon Wimbush and Ian Book, type of situation. John A1 says, is Kelly's staff losing this team's trust? Lawrence Keys was a veteran of the team. I'm sure there are more issues than on the field now. And I think there's a lot to that. When you're having what happened this week happen, that's going to affect your football team.
Absolutely.
And then Nate Tony with by the way, John A1, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. And then John A1 says, super impressed with Tommy Rees so far. Huge part of why we are 2-0 and not 0-2.
Absolutely.
There's some things. When it comes to the play calling, I'm going to hold off a little bit because I want to go back and watch the film. But my gut feeling, and Vince and I talked about this on the way back to the car, was I felt like he called a good game considering they're just what – the only thing I would have liked to see him do more is maybe move the pocket with Cone a little bit more. They kind of went to that early.
You do that to help out your offensive line too.
Correct.
That's the point.
And just where they just can't pin their ears back and then from that you can do some creative stuff, half roll, throw back. I mean, there's some things you can do creatively out of that. I don't think Tommy Rees came into this game assuming his offensive line was going to get destroyed by Toledo.
How could you?
That's the problem.
I mean, how could you think that?
That's the problem. And look, there's only so many things you can dial up when your offensive line's getting physically whipped, snap after snap after snap.
Absolutely.
But I also think that Tommy Rees did some things in this game that gave this team a chance to do what they needed to do to win. The wheel route was one. Taking that aggressive shot late was one. And that's the thing I've liked about him so far, to Nate's point, is when they need a play, he gets aggressive. I mean, he goes for it. They had a 3rd and 1 slant to Kevin Austin. That's a risky throw. Throwing inside on a loaded box, that's a risky throw. It's also a great play call.
Right.
It just says a lot that they're throwing so much on 3rd and 1. It says a lot about what Tommy Rees thinks about his offensive line.
When they went 13 personnel and they're throwing a slant. Look, it's one-on-one. I trust my guy to make the play. It looked like an
RPO to me. I have to go back and watch it again. Sure. We saw a lot of RPOs today.
We did. But most of them.
Somebody on Twitter was like, they don't have RPOs at Jack Cohn, because there apparently are still some people that think RPOs are read zones. They're not.
It's either a handoff or a throw.
It just blows my mind.
Not triple option. Like,
there's a version of that.
There's a version of that.
Right? But we saw that with Tyler Buckner, but that's not an RPO. It's just hilarious how people are. And that's why I don't go on Twitter hardly at all on game day anymore. We stick on the message board. But I think he made some good calls. I love the fact that he saw what I saw on that last drive. Middle of the field's open. And that's why they went back to the 4 verts, because he knows if they play 2 and that safety and Jack Cohn. Remember last year when I wish Notre Dame had a quarterback that could look a safety off. That's exactly what Cohn did. He looked outside, got that guy to jump Braden Lindsey, came and immediately came back inside to Michael Mayer.
What was the first thing I said to you after they scored that touchdown with Michael Mayer about the quarterback?
Oh,
now
yeah.
Now that last year's quarterback doesn't hit the seam.
Right.
Because he didn't hit the seam.
He
doesn't
never
hit
threw
the
the seam.
seams.
He
doesn't
wouldn't
like
make
the
that
seam.
throw.
He's allergic
He
to the
wouldn't make that
seam.
throw.
Right.
Yeah.
Just saying. That's just a fact. That's not – I don't want people getting all upset with me, but that's just a fact. He wouldn't throw the seam.
Yep. And you know, that's the thing. But that's one of the things I liked about this game, though, Vince, is because this team had every opportunity to fold.
Right.
And they
I
did
agree with that. I agree with that.
We got another super chat from Neil Wachter. He says Buckner will be the constant reminder to Cone that he has to make teams respect the QB run. I think Vince kind of talked about that earlier. After Buckner came in, hey Jack, you want to stay on the field? You better be willing to pull this sucker.
Which I think is great. I think that's great.
I think it's a great point by Neil.
Yeah, it was wide open.
I love super chats. I appreciate super chats. It's even better when you're making a great point, and a lot of the super chats today are great.
Really
seriously, great points. And it's like, do we need to do a show? We just want to just bring up these super chats, and you guys are nailing it. I love it. I've got another super chat down here I want to get to, and again, we appreciate this very, very much.
No,
TJ0311, old O-line, retired U.S. Marine Corps, brain damage, so sorry. Old-time football, Imposure will run 23 between the tackles.
They can't.
First of all,
thank you for your service.
Yes,
TJ.
Especially on a day like today.
Yeah, no question.
And especially the Marines, right?
No question.
So just absolutely. What's the expression they use? Retreat hell. I love that. From you ever see Battle Los Angeles? It's one of them. They use it in there. I love it. But appreciate your service. But
absolutely,
the problem is I understand where you're coming from. I do, but they tried that early, and it just isn't there.
Right.
There's no room to run. There's too many mistakes from an assignment standpoint. There's too much ground being given up. There's just nowhere to go. That's why these backs keep bouncing things, is because they're just getting pushed back. And so, it's a problem, Vince. It's a problem that has to get addressed. It's got to get.
Believe me, TJ, there's nothing I like better than good O-line play and the guys up front just beating the snot out of the other guys. That's football, man, and that's the old school. I love that kind of football. There's nothing better that I would love to see that. The problem is, right now they can't do that. Even if they wanted to, it would be akin to walking up and just banging your head against the wall. I mean, that's what it would end up being, and that's obviously you're not going to win football games that way. But I love your thought process. If they could do it, I'd be like, yes, pound the football, let's do it. You know, I would be all about that. So there's one more. Yeah,
John A1 says there's no way the defense is getting good looks in practice up front. How can they be better with the mess on the other side? And that's a great point, John. Again, thank you again for another super chat. But that's an absolutely great point.
Yep.
That's part of preparation. And,
yes,
look, the defense is battling offensive linemen that are far more physically competitive than what the offensive line has been. That's a big problem. And I want to address a question that's right above it. It says, I strongly disagree about moving the pocket with Cone. Maybe if it's a read option, but Cone's strengths are reading the whole field. You move him and he only has half his targets. That's fine. That's okay. We saw that last week. One of the big plays of the game was a bootleg where he rolls. He's got a guy in the flats and he bangs Braden Lindsey behind. The reality is I'm not saying your whole offense is moving Jack Cone, but there's always advantages to moving the pocket. What do you see something funny or something?
The next super chat is fantastic.
But the point is you have to be able to not have the defensive line for the other team or the linebackers of the other team always know where your quarterback is. There are things you can do from that. I mean, look, Clemson moved the pocket with Trevor Lawrence. Joe Burrow would have sprint outs and bootlegs at LSU, but Jack Cone can't do that. That's good coaching. You have if they always know where your quarterback's going to be, it makes it much easier for a defensive coordinator to be able to game plan to go at him and limit him. And that is an area where Jack could be a little bit more effective as a runner. You get him out of the pocket, he's already got some momentum, and he can just tuck it and run for 5 to 10 yards. So I just saw the next super chat. So I'm gonna
I just texted you.
Go ahead and put it. I'm gonna pull it up.
Okay. All right.
So this is from Spanky. I'd like to remind everyone that Mike Frank used to say Harry Hiestand sucked. He did. He did say that. Josh Phillips. Is it wrong, Vince?
I'm just
you don't want to get another text message. Don't you upset about Josh Phillips with the $5 super chat. Purdue and Wisconsin don't scare me, but since he does, if the O-line doesn't improve by Cincinnati game, it'll be their first loss. Is it still too early to panic? I'm not in panic mode, but I'm very concerned.
Falling, but I'm more concerned than I was. That was my point at the very beginning of the show.
Yes.
Do I still think this team can be good? Yes, because they do have talented guys up front. It's just they're not showing it, right? They're just not showing it. Zeke Correll, I could run forward and not block anybody, right? He's more talented as an offensive lineman than I am. Find somebody and put your hat on him. Like that's coaching. That's coaching. See that on film, be like, dude, 52, you need to hit somebody.
I'm going to disagree with you on those two, the first part of that, because I'm sorry if not you, Vince, the super chat. I agree with you. The super chat. It did sound like I was saying I don't agree with you. Wisconsin has a very aggressive and talented front seven. If the offensive line plays like they did against Toledo, Wisconsin will whip them on that side of the ball. Now, can Notre Dame still make plays on their perimeter with their skill players? Yeah, which is what we saw today, what we saw last week. And Purdue has one of the best defensive ends that Notre Dame is going to play. And if those little kids that Toledo were throwing at Notre Dame were kicking the tackles' butts, what's George Karlaftis going to do?
Right.
He's one of the best defensive ends in the country.
He's got to be licking his chops
problem.
Right now.
That's a major problem.
Licking
and the fact that Brian Kelly's completely unwilling. And again, I'm going to give him a little bit of a pass for now. Let's see what they do next week. Right after a game is not the time to be talking about moving your left tackle, your center to left tackle.
Fair enough.
Your immediate response is going to be, no, we're not doing that. But you go home, you have the conversation. It's kind of like the game where they decided to bench Brandon Wimbush. They were not thinking, Brian Kelly wasn't thinking that after the game.
Right.
It wasn't until later when they sat down to talk, said, hey, look, we got to figure something else out. We got to do something different. And then he was like, yeah, okay, we got to do what we got to do. So hopefully they rethink this. But at the same time, when you've got a top 100 recruit as a redshirt freshman left tackle, does anyone think if Tosh Baker went to Alabama, he'd look this bad? You're talking about a top 100 recruit who couldn't block kids from Toledo.
Right.
Right. And look, if it was just Tosh, I'd say, look, the kid ain't ready. But here's the way you evaluate whether it's a blocking, a player thing or a coaching thing, right? If it's one kid or two kids that are struggling, usually it's a player thing. When it's happening across the board, it's a coaching thing. And it's happening across the board. They're getting physically whipped across the board. That's not okay.
Yeah.
That's a coaching problem.
Exactly.
And that's going to have to get addressed. And it's so that's why. Yeah. You were trying to be nice, Vince. You were trying to be nice.
I'm trying. I really am.
Yeah. Richard Holt asks, will BK swallow his pride and bring Harry back? No. And I see a lot of the comments about bring Harry. It's not. And I made a joke about that on the message board, but it's not happening. No. Harry's not going to coach college football again. And Brian Kelly's definitely not going to bring Harry Hiestand back. I did want to say a couple more things about the offense, Vince. One thing that they're going to have to work on at receiver, they're going to have to get a lot better at getting off press.
Yeah,
twice they got pushed out of bounds on plays they caught because their press release moves were bad. And this has been something we've talked about for a few years now. It's a coaching thing.
Right.
The other thing is Kyron Williams did not play well today. He had the great run on the 43-yard touchdown, but outside of that, part of it wasn't necessarily on him because I understand it. It's like we talked about with Cone. You're anticipating penetration. There were some missed holes. His pass pro today was left a lot to be desired. Mm-hmm. But you cannot put the ball on the ground. You're an All-American running back. You're a 1,000-yard rusher. You want to be the man. You're a captain.
Right.
You cannot put the ball in. And it wasn't like he even got really stripped like that bad. I mean, it was like that just can't happen.
Right.
I mean, especially that late in the game, you've got to be in, ultra run out. I mean, you were in run out the clock mode.
Absolutely.
And you put the ball on the ground, you just that can't happen. Yeah. It can't. He puts the ball on the ground too much.
That was disappointing.
And you're now in year two. You can't put the ball on the ground too much. But I did like the talent. And I don't know. I haven't watched the game yet, but there were guys open a lot in this game. Mm-hmm. And this is the other thing that kind of gives me some hope. Again, I got to break the game down. I may change my opinion tomorrow when we do upon further review, but so far I felt like I liked what Tommy Rees did considering the circumstances of his offensive line just wasn't doing anything. I thought he tried. I mean, they tried to, do some reverse, they did the fake reverse swing, screen, which if Kane Madden doesn't run right by a guy, might have gone for something, he tried to pull some stuff out of the, some tricks out of his, from up his sleeve or out of a hat or whatever the proper expression is. But when your offensive line just doesn't block, I mean, there's only so much you can do. But He never stopped being aggressive, which I really liked, and he kept attacking. And if the offensive line can just get to average, honestly, they've scored 41 and 32 points in the first two games with a horrible offensive line.
Absolutely correct.
If you want to talk about what are some bright spots, if you can just get, average on the average offensive line play after the first 2 weeks would be a big jump from where they are now. Yes, am I being hyperbolic there? Or
no, I'm
not trying to be hyperbolic.
You're being accurate.
So the point is, if they can just get to average, this team is going to be real hard to stop on the offensive line.
Correct.
Because
on the offensive side of the ball, yeah, right.
Offensive side of the ball, yes, thank you. Because they're still scoring and moving the ball. They had more yards in this game than they did against Florida State, right? They had 449 in this game, and you threw for over 300 yards again. Jack Cohn threw for 239. Tyler Buckner went 3 for 3 for 78 yards. Right. So they did count that swing pass initially. Okay. Called it as a run initially. They changed it to a pass.
And it was, Cohn was 65%, 64%. Right. I mean, look, is it 74 where he was last week? No. Mm-hmm. And there was some room for improvement, obviously.
Sure, he did not play a good game today. He made plays when he needed to.
Right, absolutely.
But he did not play well today.
And by the way, he's still the starter.
Right.
I will say that, though. Yes. Can I just get that out there? He's still the starter.
Yeah. Should be. So Kevin Dillon with another super chat. Yeah. Kevin, thank you so much. That we are a good team, just not a great team. Wide receivers need to play more physical, can't be shoved out of bounds. He's absolutely right about that. And right now they're not a great team, but they're not a bad team. I had a friend of mine who loved the guy to death, known him for 20 years. He said, we're not a top 20 team right now. I'm like, come on, man. Right? Like, can we just chill out, right, with that kind of stuff? Like, yes, they're still a top 20 team. They're just not playing like a top 5 team. You know who else isn't playing like a top 5 team right now? Ohio State.
Yeah.
I'd rather be where Notre Dame is than where Clemson and Ohio State are.
Sure.
And again, look, they lost to good teams, right? And if Notre Dame played better teams, they'd probably have a loss, but they don't have a loss. So they're at least still in a good position to where
they didn't play Mercer, though.
Winning games. And I like what they did. But Kevin, thank you very, very much for that super chat, buddy. I really appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
B Place with another super chat. Appreciate that, B Place, very much. I love his avatar, by the way. The Bobby Boucher avatar is phenomenal. I think there are 4 spots on the offensive line open to the most physical guy each week. In practice, Madden got destroyed on a few plays. I don't see confidence yet. This is important. Need to see some heart in who wants it. He's a 6-year senior, right? I mean, I'm sorry. He should not be getting whooped like that.
He played terrible. It wasn't just a few plays. It was the game. I mean, he did not play well. He would get out in front and whiff. He would get beat to his inside. He just did not play well. Did not. Mm-hmm. He's not playing like a second-team All-American. He's not. Mm-hmm. And look, let's put it this way. The film didn't lie from Marshall, in my opinion. And he's exactly who we thought he was going to be. Maybe even a little bit worse. To me.
No, because he's not being coached. Because the one thing he was at Marshall was physical and fundamentally sound.
And he's not that anymore.
He is physical at times, but he's fundamentally incredibly unsound.
He didn't. The fact that he's not running his feet through blocks is just devastating to me, because I thought that that's where he would excel, was in run blocking. Get into a guy and just drive him home. Right? He's not doing that. He's stopping his feet and he's getting dominated. He's playing patty cake with guys. It's not okay. Not as an interior guard, interior lineman at the University of Notre Dame. That's not cutting it. It's not.
Right. And this is not. I'm sorry, David. I love that you're in the show and appreciate the comment, but Toledo is not a great defense.
No,
they're a MAC team.
They were midgets over there.
The best defense in the MAC is not a great defensive team. There's not a single player on that defense that would start at Notre Dame. Not one.
And one of them actually
Not
transferred
one.
from Notre Dame to
Because he couldn't get on the field.
correct.
Jonathan Jones.
Right.
Yes, they brought a lot of guys back. It's still Toledo, right? This isn't the spin show, right? We're not going to get up here and just hammer them for nothing, but this isn't the spin show. The Toledo's not a great defense. Florida State's not a great defense, right? Notre Dame has problems up front. They have problems up front, and they're going to have to get figured out. Do I think the line will get better? Yeah, because they can't get any worse.
No.
I don't think it's possible for them to play. I shouldn't say that. It could come back to haunt me.
They'll prove you wrong next week.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a problem. That's a problem. They're not a great team. We said before the game they're incredibly well coached. They're going to play hard, and they did. But Toledo is not a team that should have had a chance to beat Notre Dame at the end of the game.
Nope.
Toledo's not a team Notre Dame should have had a fourth quarter comeback against to beat.
Correct. They were losing in the fourth quarter to Toledo.
Twice.
Yeah, twice.
Twice. They went into the fourth quarter down, and then when they took the lead, Toledo, they lost it again. That can't happen. It just can't happen. So, takeaways from offense. The Spanky 412, did Marshall run zone schemes? Yeah, they did a lot of zone schemes. So takeaways from the offense, Vince, in this game?
Offensive line needs to improve.
Cone country mile.
Yeah, Cone can't get rattled by those guys. He still has to play his game. I thought the change of Tyler Buckner was great. I think they need to keep doing that and expand his role a little bit. He's still not the starter. I thought there's dynamic players at receiver. There are, but they have to play better and press, obviously. So that's the summary, really. I mean, and if we were talking, if we're not talking about the offensive line, we're just talking about everybody else. Those are all things that can get cleaned up that I'm not worried about.
There's a lot to like about where this team is from everywhere but the offensive line.
Yes, the problem is the offensive line dictates so much of what you can and can't do offensively. Right. They just do. Right. So they have to get better. They at least have to be average, like you said, and they're not there yet. And I'm not seeing a path to getting there at the moment. We'll see.
Right. We got a couple more super chats here. Yes, Mike Huff, great win, but man, I'm more concerned than I'm more the concerned, guys. And I agree. I think I might have missed a super chat up there from Bronx Indy Irish. I thought I saw his avatar. Oh, here we go. Bronx Indy Irish, Bronx Indy fan. I appreciate that. How much of this is personnel versus coaching? Some of our offensive line looks slow and hurt. I think there are some personnel issues because of the coaching, right? And what I mean by that is Zeke Correll is 6'3", 295 pounds. He has to be able to fire off and attack, play with good leverage, play low. The fact that a 6'2" and a 6'3" guard, Kane Madden 6'2", and those two guys are 6'3" is and they're losing the leverage battle is a technique problem. And again, if it was just Zeke or just Kane, I'd say that guy needs to get better. But it's both of them.
Right.
And somebody asked, there was a question earlier and said, if you were Jeff Quinn, what would you do? And one of them is
sorry.
One of them is I think you need to at least give Rocco Spindler a chance to play. At least rotate him in because
he'll be aggressive. He'll be aggressive because he doesn't know any better.
You hope.
That's how I feel. I don't think he knows.
I would hope he would be a more aggressive. I would consider moving. I would consider moving Josh Lugg out. I would. I mean, excuse me, not Josh Lugg out. Jarrett Patterson out. Tosh Baker needs a lot of technical work. Now, how will Tosh play if he's got a week of practice? And we'll see.
Yeah, because we don't know what the
I'd be willing to give Tosh a start. I would. Sure. Now, I'd have a real early replacement. If you don't want to move Jarrett Patterson, I understand that. And I understand, especially with there's a counter argument. See, look, I would have liked to have seen them move Jarrett Patterson. We talked about that. But I still understand where they are with wanting to have him at center because with all the issues that you have with the offensive line, you can't now then create an issue up the middle at center.
Yeah.
You at least have to have one stabilizing force.
they barely have that. I'm just saying. There were times where Jarrett played well. There were. And he's the leader of that offensive line. Yep. There he is. And there were times when Josh Lugg played well. So those are your two. That's the two that you have that are as close to as, even as you need them to be. They got 3 other holes they got to fill right now. And either those guys that are in those holes need to get better, or they need to find somebody else that can do it. Now we have 3 other super chats we need to get to.
Yes.
4 now. 4 now.
Okay, there's Spanky, Mike Huff. Mike Huff is the last one that we have, right? Bronx ND has another one.
Yep. It should be a yellow one.
Okay, here we go. Bronx ND fan with another super chat. Thank you again for that. You guys answer my question. It's coaching. What can we do at this point in the season? At least this team shows composure in the fourth quarter. I mean, if I'm Brian Kelly, that's where I'm spending all my time. I'm just damn. That's where I'm spending all my time. And look, Jeff, get it done. Here's what you need to do: A, B, C, and D, and go get it done. And I'm gonna know what his practice plans look like. I'm gonna have a say in the practice plans. I'm going to say this is what I need to do. This is what we need to do. I'm holding you and the GA accountable. If you don't get this fixed, we're gonna have a problem. And the answer isn't just moving guys in and out, right? Like somebody asked me another thing I would do. You know what? Andrew Kristofic played tackle for his first 2 years. Give Andrew a shot out there.
Right. It's their
you
open
need
jobs.
to be open. You can't just be plugging in the next guy. You need to give him a chance. You need to give Rocco a chance, because with what we saw the last 2 weeks in the offensive line, there are not a lot of safe places. I'm sorry. Yeah. And you can't just keep saying, but here's the thing. Andrew hasn't been developed like he needs to either.
Right. Absolutely. Because
again, this is ultimately a coaching problem.
Right.
So, but you have to try some other things. I mean, look, can Rocco really be worse than what we've seen at guard the last 2 weeks? I don't think he can. And I feel bad saying this because I like Zeke Correll. You really like Zeke Correll.
I did. I like what he did at center.
He just isn't. He's playing poor football. Maybe I'm not ready to just throw him aside yet, but I'm at least going to get Rocco
ready for competition.
Look, if Tyler Buckner is able to get in the game with as good as Jack Cohn had played last week and some of the good things Jack Cohn did, then why can't you get Rocco Spindler a couple snaps? Why can't you look and put Andrew at center and move Jarrett Patterson out to guard or something like? You've got to be able to try. Look, Andrew Kristofic is a top 100 recruit. Zeke Correll's top 100 recruit. These are not 3-star kids that you're developing, right? These are talented football players that it's your responsibility to coach up. If there's a lot of offensive line coaches in the country that would love to have Notre Dame's players, get them coached up. Give Quinn Carroll a shot. I mean, you've got guys. Give John Dirksen a shot. Can John Dirksen really be worse than what we've seen last 2 weeks? And I know that Kane Madden's a 6-year senior and a preseason All-American and all that kind of stuff. He has not played well enough for me. How bad must your second line guards be if they can't even earn a snap with how bad the guards have been the last 2 weeks?
Right. And I this just came to me and it's a little bit off topic, so I'll let you look for the next super chat because there's like 7 we need to get to. But what I will say is when Tyler Buckner was in, the majority of the time, the running back standing next to him was Chris Tyree. I like that. I like that combination. They kind of have a thing together.
With Buckner?
Yeah.
Well, there was times too when they had Buckner and both running backs on the field at the same time, which I really like. And Avery Davis threw a pass.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Absolutely.
TJ0311, our Marine friend. Again, Semper Fi, my friend. Thank you for the super chat. Violence of action, we do not have it. Amen. I know it's not life or death. If you do not want it, you won't get it. Hard men, soft times. Soft men, hard times. Got the W. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. We got another super chat right below it from Mike Huff. Says, need to switch some guys around in the O-line. Patterson at left tackle, Rocco Spindler time. Remember they had an issue in 2014? Remember in 2014, they had a bunch of dudes out. I think Nick Martin missed the spring. A couple other guys, Christian Lombard, I think, missed part of the spring because there were some injuries. So, the offensive line didn't get a chance until, the season started. They had Nick Martin at center. I think you had Connor Hanratty at guard. You had Steve Elmer at tackle and Christian Lombard at guard. And then Nick Martin got his hand hurt, and middle of the season, Harry Heastan switched things around. He put Matt Hegarty at center. He moved Martin to guard. He flipped Elmer and I think it was Elmer and Christian Lombard. And all of a sudden, even though they were losing games on the stretch, the offensive line, that was actually the best the offensive line played down the stretch, or that season was down the stretch of those games. The offensive line actually played pretty well. And then, of course, they went out against LSU. Then they put Mike McGlinchey in the lineup against LSU. And Notre Dame ran for a bunch of yards on them. But the offensive line, if you remember, again, because we're talking about 2014, you all may think that it was a bad time, but down the stretch, I mean, they ran for 211 yards against Northwestern. Torian Folsom ran for 100 yards against Louisville that next week. They lost the game, but there were 3 running backs that went for 100 yards on that Louisville defense that year. It was a good Louisville defense, and it was Torian Folston, Dalvin Cook, and Duke Johnson, right? 2 first-round draft picks and Torian Folston in that game. They finished their numbers that game were 29 for 99 yards. But remember, that was a game they had a 40-yard loss. Remember that ball that got flown over Everett Golson's head, and it was like a 40-yard loss? They ran, and they had some sacks, but they ran the ball a lot better that game. And then, of course, they went out against LSU and ran for 263 yards. And they also ran for over 200 against Navy in that game. So, I mean, they got better down the stretch because they were willing to move guys around. In the middle of a season, you have to be willing to do that. You have to be willing to at least consider it. Maybe you don't want to move Patterson because you at least want to make sure that center is set. I get it.
Yeah.
But everything, to me, as bad as the offensive line was, that's going to keep you from being a title contending team. Because right now, we shouldn't even be having that conversation right now.
Correct.
Right now, it's like, what do you got to do to beat Purdue? Right. But if you want to be a program that continues what you've been doing, you're going to all options are on the table right now. There are no jobs that are safe.
Absolutely.
I would say Jarrett Patterson, Josh Lugg are going to start for me somewhere.
Yes, I agree. Somewhere. Absolutely.
But I'd be willing to move Josh to guard if it meant getting the best 5 on the field. I probably would want. And why not put Josh Lugg at left tackle? He can't be worse than the 3rd string left tackle. I mean, but anyway, that's a different thing.
We got a lot more to get to.
To Mike's question, I agree with you. Everything is on the table right now.
Just go in order and hit.
Trying to get there.
There's like 8 or 9, I think, that we need to hit.
Wow. Okay, here we go. I got bumped down a little bit, so I'm trying to get back to these. Indy Man with a $5 super chat. Appreciate that very much. Just wanted to get in there. All right.
You guys are bringing the heat today on the super chats. Yes. We really appreciate it, man.
Get some more of these. Kevin Dillon with the $20 super chat. Can Walker play linebacker? That's the real question.
Morion?
Who? I don't know who, Kevin. I'm not sure you're referring to. I don't know anyone named Walker. But could you just kind of follow up with that? Let me know what you're saying. Hey, there's some bickering going on in the chat. Please let's not do that. Right, we're all on the same team here. The Spanky 412. I'm sorry, but it must be said. It's a sin that Brian Kelly has more wins than Lou Holtz, and it will be a mortal sin when he passes Rockne. I understand the frustration, but the reality is yes, Brian Kelly has got some things he's got to fix, but Brian Kelly also has us in a place where we're upset about being 2-0.
Sure, absolutely.
There's about a 20-year stretch, a 25-year stretch where this team's at least 1-1, probably 0-2 right now.
Yeah, and the number
we do have to be able to talk about that.
And the number of wins you have does not make you the best coach in the history.
And everybody knows that. Everybody knows you play more games now. Everybody knows that because his winning percentage isn't anywhere close to Lou Holtz or Era's or anybody else's. So Matt Romero with the super chat. For the record, I've been calling for that 80 pass trickery. Just don't think we'd need it for Toledo. And Brian Kelly said after the game, like we can't use that play anymore because it's been used. It's not necessarily true. It just means you can't use it. You got to use something else next.
Yeah, right.
But Vince said that. It's funny, Matt, that you said that, but Vince said that same thing. We were driving home because Vince and I actually live in the same neighborhood. So we drove to the game together, drove home from the game together, and we're planning our show out. And we were listening to the press conference, and when Brian Kelly said that, Vince was like, I can't believe they had to use that against Toledo.
Right. And believe me, they feel the same way. They were not planning on pulling that play out against Toledo. No chance.
Yes. I got a couple more. Chief Brody, Arkansas. Are they beating Texas right now? See, we're not watching. I have to pull up some of these games. And I don't know how to say that.
Edited?
I'm
going to go with edited.
Yep. Thank you for the super chat there. Appreciate that very, very much. And I think so, Vince, any other kind of – they're up Arkansas is up on Texas 16-0 right now. And Ohio State lost today. So before we get to defense, Ohio State lost today.
I was
very happy about that. That was fun. Texas is losing right now 16-0. It could be worse, folks.
Facts. And it may get worse. But as of right now, it is not.
Right now, they're still 2-0.
They're 2-0 at the present.
They're still 2-0. Miami's losing to App State right now.
Wow.
Let's get to some more of these games. This is always fun. I'm getting caught up on games here. Let's see. Looking through some more of these scores. Oh, North Carolina's finally winning. Let's see. Somebody said that Iowa ended up beating Iowa State by 10. It's a bad loss for the old Cyclones.
Told you. You and I talked about that one as we were walking in.
Alabama only beat Mercer 48-14. They must have called off the dogs a little bit on that one. Texas A&M beat Colorado 10-7.
Ooh.
Oh,
listen,
it could be worse.
Listen, people. We told you at the beginning
losing in the second quarter to Murray State. By the way,
look, I am not. I'm not saying that Notre Dame is going to win the national championship. Okay, but
that conversation's not happening for a while.
But what we said about this being a wide open year still holds. That still holds true. Okay, because look at these scores from week 2, right? I mean, it still holds for me.
Oklahoma State needed a comeback win to beat Tulsa, who lost to an FCS team in the opener.
Hey, I'm down at the bottom now. I'm going to throw up a few super chats.
Yes,
Brian, I'm going to help you out here. I got
TCU
sick of being at the top.
Cal. Sorry, I'm looking at these scores.
You're
TCU
fine.
Beat Cal. Yeah, it could be worse. Could be worse.
Fine.
So Vince,
Brandon.
Yeah, go ahead.
Brandon Plentzner, thanks for the super chat. He says, after this week's recent events, Dell is probably thinking to himself right now, thank God for Jeff Quinn and the offensive line. Attention diverted.
Yes,
that's
absolutely
really
correct.
That's actually really funny.
Absolutely correct. Whew. It's
Yeah,
like, if you're like a famous person or you're in politics or something like that, it's like there's a story about you and then like something crazy happens. Like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Is there something else to write about besides me?
Well, no, it's like when you have a sibling and you did something stupid, but then your sibling does something even dumber. It's like, great. This is fantastic. All right. Andrew Rhodes. Thanks, Andrew. He says, you guys are the best. It's upsetting that we almost lost to Toledo, but at least we scored more than 10 points, unlike Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Against Colorado.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we've got one from Kevin Dillon. Kevin Dillon says, was a joke, i.e. Watts being moved to linebacker.
I got you.
And play linebacker.
Sorry about that, Kevin. That kind of – and I feel bad that you had to do a super chat to say that.
That wasn't the intention.
I didn't want you to do a super chat just because you could just do a normal chat, and I would have pulled that up there. But it's appreciated. Yeah, it's appreciated.
Very much appreciate it.
If I meet you up at a game, I'll like buy you a drink, one of those fountain drinks to make up for the super chat amount.
Can we say –
Super chats are less.
Right now that we can remind everybody that next week for the Purdue game, we're having the Irish Breakdown tailgate. So
I'm putting you over under on 10, Vince. I'm taking the under. I haven't had many. Let's go 15.
Come on.
I'm going to take the under.
Hey,
now,
we got 615
not the total number of
right
people that come, not the total number of people that come, but because people bring wives, but as far as IB listers, I'm going 50. I'm going under.
Hey, come find us. We will give you more details, obviously, I'm assuming on irishbreakdown.com. Yep. But come see us, man. I get to talk to Brian all the time. I'd love to talk to some other people. You know what I'm saying? We had a great day today. But what I'm saying is, come, man. We're gonna have a blast. I got a radio show to do. Then I'm gonna head over. Brian will be over there. It's gonna be a blast. So come.
Vince, let's dive into the defense.
Yes, I can't believe we haven't even talked about the defense yet. So the defense did what I wanted them to do early. They were setting the tone early. Now, gave up a couple big plays, absolutely.
And again, it was – and here – can I say something on that,
Yeah,
Vince?
Please do.
Here's the difference between the defense and the offense. The stuff that's going on defense is the typical early season. Oh, and John A1 just had a super chat, by the way.
He did. That makes a
we
great
forgot
point.
to talk about this. Colsey and Styles got a catch today and saw Diggs on special teams. I don't think that was Diggs. I think that was Justin Walters.
Right.
Hope we get to see Diggs get a carry in the future. I did like that they actually put them in the first half. Colsey and Styles, they both got a catch.
Estime, though, was on the kick return team.
Yes, he was. He was one of the upbacks. He was one of the fullbacks on that. But, yeah, it was nice to see them play and get some real game reps.
Yes.
And get touches when the game was was still on the line.
Because when they would come in, Brian would go, oh, look, Colsey and Styles are in. They're running the ball.
And for the most part, they did. But that's what I love about RPOs, though, because you can call a run play and still throw the ball to one of those guys. So.
And they both got a catch today.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
That's fantastic. I love it. That's awesome.
But what we were saying about the offense, about the defense and the offense, Vince, the one difference on defense is a lot of the stuff that's going on you can attribute to, and Brian Kelly talked about this, and this is one thing that he said that I agreed with is, they're still learning a completely different system. And there's a lot more changes than I thought. Marcus Freeman has made more changes than I thought he was going to make this early.
From week 1 to week 2?
No, from Clark Lee to him.
Oh, gotcha.
That's what I mean. I thought he would slowly kind of change to what he's doing, and he's just wholesale just turned it over. We could talk about whether that's a good thing or not, but they did it. And the mistakes that are being made, that they're giving a big place, they're execution mistakes.
Correct.
They're not a lack of toughness. It's guys losing contain on run plays, not hitting the right gaps. It's KJ Wallace knowing exactly who he's got, that Toledo motions around. They don't want to run a wheel route. KJ goes downhill instead of playing up.
And he gets beat.
And then he gets beat.
It was very similar to what happened to Houston Griffith. He took a similar path that Houston Griffith took on that wheel route.
They ran that same play. Yeah, yes. Well, yes. But the difference is that this one they were motioning, right?
Right. But he still took a bad angle. Like he flat-footed it, took a bad angle, and then was playing catch-up. And
later in the game, they tried to go back to that play, and Houston stayed on top of it, and they curled the guy up and threw a hitch route. And
so Houston learned from his mistake. Right? So which
learned from KJ's mistake.
Yes, absolutely.
You had Kyle Hamilton just turning guys loose. They caught some breaks today with Kyle Hamilton, who did not play well today. But the point is, almost all the things that I'm looking at on defense, Vince, are correctable mistakes, like quickly correctable mistakes. Meaning they're things you can clean up in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, right.
And we saw them clean up some of that stuff today.
And I also thought that their subbing was better, right? Because that's one of the things that we talked about.
Yes, we did not see the wholesale
we didn't see the wholesale twos coming in. We didn't see that because you made it a comment at one point. I was like, well, no, so and so and so and so. He's like, oh, okay, yeah. So they didn't have the entire second team in all at once. They sprinkled it in. So look, the coaches are learning from their mistakes too, and they're adjusting, which I like, which is great. And I want to talk about. You want to talk about a couple of individuals that I thought played really well?
Yeah, we got a couple super chats I want to get to here first.
Good call. Spanky again.
It's not a tailgate if Brian is only shooting Mountain Dew. Yes, it is. The Irish Breakdown tailgates will not include alcoholic beverages being consumed by Vince or myself or Spanky's guys.
It's one of the things that you and I absolutely will always agree on.
Yes,
Mountain Dew. Just saying.
Tim Opal, my guy Tim Opal. Thanks for being part of the show, Tim.
Thanks, man.
Dr. Tim Opal, I believe. Tim is a dentist. A great show, guys. Keep up the awesome work. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that very much.
Thanks, man.
So talk about some individual performances.
Yeah. So from an individual standpoint, you want to go front to back, like we were talking about, like giving out game balls front to back on defense.
We can do that.
Let's start at the front. We both thought Isaiah Foskey played a heck of a ball game. They stay with a 4 for all the people that were all up in arms about the fact that Notre Dame went to that 3 front and stayed in it in the last game. They did not do that in this game. There was a couple times they were in a 3 front, but they brought a 4th person generally from that 3, which I thought was great. The rest of the time they were in 4 down, which was awesome. Isaiah Foskey, I thought, did play well when they had him at linebacker. He didn't do terrible when he was there, but he played even better when he was on the line. We both thought that he played very, very well. From the linebacker position, J.D. Bertrand played exceptionally well from the naked eye. Now we're going to go back and we're going to watch, and I'm sure, a few mistakes were made here and there, but I thought he was around the football all game. I thought he played so well. He met backs in the hole. I thought he did a great, great job. I was very impressed with J.D. And then in the secondary, I was very impressed with Cam Hart for the most part. Now, he gave up a couple plays, 1 or 2, but they were in a zone situation towards the end of the game. So I don't necessarily put that on him per se, but I thought his coverage was good. More importantly, I thought his run defense was exceptional. He made a lot of open field tackles that I was impressed with. I thought he's had a really good 2 games. I was very – and in my runner-up in the defensive backfield would be Clarence Lewis. I thought he played pretty well too. There were bright spots on the defense for sure.
But and I thought Foskey played well. Jay Samuel had a lot of good moments. But then Foskey is the guy that blew the backside contain. Didn't you say that's what it was? So what we did part of the game, Vince would watch parts and then I would watch parts. So again, those are correctable mistakes. That's why I'm not as upset about even last week. I'm not as upset about the defense as maybe some people are. They're giving up more big plays than I anticipated, but it's a lot of it's just technical mistakes that you got to clean up. It's not, they're not as good as I thought, or the talent's not there. It's Foskey who had another sack, made some big plays in this game, losing contain. You can't do that, but that's a much easier thing to correct than I'm getting my butt kicked at the line of scrimmage.
And I want to explain how he lost contain. So what he did is he bit hard on the fake to the running back. He came down the line very, very hard, which means he did not have contain on the outside. Now, when you do that, now the quarterback's running free. Now, and I will say, even though I just sung the praises of J.D. Bertrand, he had an opportunity to shut down that play. He also got blocked, and he wasn't able to get off of it. So, both guys who we just gave game balls to made a mistake at the end, which counted for a touchdown.
Your all-American safety, all-world safety, and legitimately so, had 6 or 7 just poor covered, and it was technique. It was just I mean, there was one play where if they don't, there was 3 times in this game where if they don't get pressure from the front 4, it's a long touchdown. One was Tariq Bracy one, Kyle Hamilton had another, and actually Kyle Hamilton had 2, but the other 2 were Kyle Hamilton, I believe.
Yeah.
And no, he's not. Just had a bad game.
Yeah, he did not play well. He didn't play well. Look, he's not overrated. If you watch last game,
right,
those weren't overrated plays. Okay,
they were technical mistakes, and part of it is he's peeking in the backfield too much, trying to look for plays to make. Sure. This is what we talked about. That was a danger this offseason was he's got to stay within the system. Right. Look for your chance to make plays like we saw last week when you've got to overcome. But there's a couple times we saw it last week, we saw it this week where he was turning guys loose in the pass game because he was peeking in the backfield. He's got to be more like, do your job. Do your job. So, there was just a lot of that going on in this game, Vince, where it was guys were there. You just gotta finish a little bit better. But here's the other thing about today's game. The tackling in this game was a lot better.
It was a lot better
against what I view to be honest with you, I would argue a better, if equally as good skill players. Would you say? We talked about this. I really like this skill talent from Toledo, and outside of the one long run, the tackling was not as big of it was not close to being as big of an issue today.
I agree.
Now, late in the game, they had a couple misses, right? Where the issue that I saw today with some of the tackling in the fourth quarter, like it happened to Tommy Reese once. It happened, or not Tommy Reese, Houston Griffith once.
He don't play anymore.
It happened to, I'm trying to remember who the other one was. But there was twice where they just didn't get off blocks. Drew White, that's who the other one was. Just didn't get off blocks. You got to get off blocks. And the long touchdown run, it was Drew White and Houston Griffith both just got ate up.
And look, that's why
you got to eliminate that stuff.
That's why we had so much issue with Shane Simon, is he could never get off blocks, and that was an issue, right? So we're gonna bang on guys when they're not getting off blocks. That's for sure. We got another super chat from Kevin. He says, as a coach, I understand, but can you explain further why Tyler is not the long-term answer at QB this year?
No, I said he could be the long-term answer at QB this year. That's what I was saying to Vince is if down the road he's your best quarterback, and best quarterback doesn't mean most talented. It means can you run the offense at the highest level? Right. Then I would consider making it. What I'm saying, Kevin, is he's not that guy right now. That's what I'm saying. And so I want to make sure that I was clear on that. If in November Tyler Buckner's out playing the other quarterbacks and he's moving the offense better than anybody else, then you consider making a switch. I don't care who the starter. Look, Kelly Bryant led Clemson to the college football playoff and got benched the next year by Trevor Lawrence after a win. They were undefeated when they made that change.
Right.
If somebody's better, and you're talking to someone who really likes Jack Cohn.
Yeah.
And saw nothing from Jack Cohn today that makes me think he can't be the long-term answer. Jack Cohn shouldn't have to be perfect every single week to hold on to the starting job. It's not like, you made a big, horrible mistake on pick six. Hey, Trevor Lawrence had some bad throws, right? Tua Tagovailoa threw a pick six at the beginning of the college football national championship game.
Right. I think
It's
Tom
gonna
Brady's had like multiple pick sixes in a game, and he's considered the GOAT, right? So I mean,
the point is that he's got to play better, right?
He does.
But he still wasn't terrible today. But that doesn't mean that he should automatically have the job over Tyler Buckner if Tyler Buckner can move the offense the best. What I'm saying is right now, even from what we saw today, there's a couple times Tyler should have let that ball go, and he didn't because he's not there yet. He will get there. He will get there. I'm confident he will get there. And if he's there by November, then you give him more and more and more and more. So I do think he could be the long-term answer this season, but I still look at this team the first 2 weeks, say the guy that can move this offense the best, series after series, is going to be Jack Cohn.
Yes.
Because they weren't prepared for Tyler Buckner today.
Right. And that's
they
why
didn't have an answer for him.
It's one of the reasons that they were successful with it. Now, other teams now have film on Tyler Buckner, and they will be able to have a defense against it. I'm not saying he won't be successful because, look, Notre Dame is going to add to the repertoire of Tyler Buckner as well, right? It's still going to be a nice changeup. He's just not your long-term answer today, right? And that could change. So, you know what? We'll see what happens. I need to answer this. Michael Eakin. Will Vince do the Irish jig at the IB tailgate? Probably a hard no on that. And I agree with Tom A. Who the heck wants to see Vince dance? Not me. Nobody wants to see that. Okay. It'd be like a bad car accident you can't look away from. All right. Now back to some super chats. Tommy Gunn says Brian does have something in common with Book. Neither are willing to take a shot.
I'll own that. I'll own that.
That's great. That's well played, though. That is well played, Tommy. I like that a lot. Mike Huff hitting us with a super chat. Thank you, Mike. No question, but we appreciate the support. And I thought there was one more. Oh, there we go. Joshua Lopez just hitting us with another super chat. No question.
Appreciate that, Joshua.
So if we see your question, we will throw it up. I think we are all caught up on super chats.
So let's get back to the defense then, Vince.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So I overall thought the defense improved. There's still a lot to clean up.
Yeah.
There's still some gap contain issues up front, but I thought overall today they were better there. They gave up. I mean, if you look at Toledo's numbers, Toledo rushed for 132 yards today, averaged 4.3 yards per carry. They had a 67-yard run. Now there was 2 huge mistakes on that play. You take that away, and so I kind of like. I still hate the fact that in college football they count sacks as
well, and then they have a stat that says adjusted rushing.
Right.
I mean, so they even have a stat, but it's not official.
Just come on, just do it. But if you take that 67-yard run out, and again, you don't take it out from evaluating the game, but I'm just saying, like on the other run, so they had the 25 other runs, they ran for 86 yards. So I took sacks out and the 67-yard run out, and they had 86 yards on 25 carries from a team that I said would be one of your better teams. Bryant Koback, who I've said is one of the better running backs we're going to face this year. You take that 67-yard, he ended up with 22 carries or 122 yards on 21 carries. You take that 67-yard run out, and he had 55 yards on 20 carries.
Right.
So again, you got to eliminate those big plays. You eliminate those 2 big plays. Toledo in this game finished with 353 yards. 133 of them came on 2 plays. You got to clean that stuff up, right? But see, that's where Vince, I'm not as down on the defense after this game as some are, and as I am on the offense, because the defense doesn't have to correct. They're getting whipped physically. They're actually whooping both of their first 2 opponents physically. They're just not finishing off plays. You're giving up that shovel pass. I mean, you got to know that's coming. You got to get across. Drew White didn't do a good job coming across. I mean, didn't you call? I think you might have called that before.
I called both of the touchdown passes. I was like, shovel pass, it's right. And then I was like, quarterback.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, because both of those, we were kind of even with the end zone. So we were right there in that end zone area and, from the sideline. And it was so obvious to me. Now I'm used to that view as a coach, right? Mm-hmm. But that was frustrating.
Yep.
For sure.
So when you get back to the defense, that's why I guess I'm just number one. I thought this offense was a lot better than a lot of people did. Toledo. I've been saying it all week, and
I get that, but I still think if it wasn't for the big plays, Notre Dame.
That's why I'm higher on the play of the defense today. That's exactly my point, Vince. Is that I actually think this was a pretty good defense they held in check.
Gotcha.
I mean, Toledo scored 22 offensive points. I predicted them to score 24.
Yeah. And
I said they put a late touchdown on the board, but not in the circumstance that it actually happened.
You're like against the twos is what your caveat.
Right. But that was also my biggest negative on this defense today, even beyond the two big plays. I don't think I thought Drew played pretty well early last game.
Yeah.
I thought Drew played well in the first half, very well in the first half of this game. He didn't play well in the second half last week, and he didn't play well in the second half of this game. That's a concern for me. But the issue is, and this is now where I am probably most concerned about this defense. Last week in regulation, you're up 3 points. Florida State gets the ball. It's your job to make a stop and not give up points. Now, they didn't give up a touchdown, but they still allowed Florida State to go down and drive and tie the game up.
Sure.
This week, your offense finally gets a score. You finally step up and give you a lead.
Right.
And you let them go down the field and score.
Yeah.
That's a problem. Now, again, final drive, they made the stops and all that. That's great. But you've allowed those teams, your offense then had to counter again. That's kind of the big thing for me is because that's a leadership. That's a where's your mindset? That's that. Are you digging deep? That's your gut check time. And to me, they've kind of, I don't want to say failed, but failed on both instances. They had a chance to win both games on defense before overtime or the final drive and all that kind of stuff, and they didn't take advantage. And that's an issue.
Joshua Lopez, this is a great comment, so I just wanted to pull it up because I think it's awesome that your daughter was at her first game. Says, well aware of the issues, but we got the W. My daughter had a blast at her first game in South Bend. Texas fans, go Irish. Thoughts on Kyle Hamilton and coverage in the first half? It wasn't good.
If you were at the game, you saw exactly what we saw, Josh.
It wasn't good.
And that is he was turning guys loose. And I'm telling you right now, if it wasn't for the play of the defensive line in the first half, Toledo would have put a couple more scores on the board.
Mm-hmm.
That was concerned, and it would have been on Kyle. The other thing that ticked me off a little bit today is there was two really unnecessary pass interference plays, where one was on Clarence Lewis in the end zone, and the other was on Cam Hart on that sideline route, where they're grabbing with their inside arms and then reaching around, or outside arms and then reaching around, and it's like you're there, you've got the position.
You don't have to grab.
You don't have to need to do that. That's something Coach Mickens is going to have to clean up because those are unnecessary penalties. And I know they're not taught to do that because, well, I just know they're not taught to do that. And they didn't do it on a lot of other plays, and they didn't do it last year a whole lot.
Right.
That's going to have to get cleaned up. That's guys not trusting their technique. And that's 100%. What I'm seeing a lot of the first two games. There's a lot of guys not trusting their technique. And they're going to have to – there's a disconnect there that can happen early on in a new coach's tenure. Sure. Especially when you're replacing a previous coach, because it's almost as if like maybe they're like, well, Coach Lee said this. I don't know if that's happening. That's just kind of one of those things that's rolled through my head saying, why are these guys not trusting their technique more? Why are they're getting there, but then they're not finishing better. But I feel like the defensive line played better today, Vince. Still a lot to clean up, but the defensive line played better. Notre Dame finished with 11 tackles for loss and 5
More
sacks.
than last week. Yeah.
Right. I mean, J.D. Bertrand had 2. Kyle had 2. Jason Adamiola, I thought he played really well in this game. Really well in this game. Yep, I thought agree. Kurt Hines struggled big time at the nose.
He made a few mistakes that really cost Notre Dame.
Yeah. Foskey had another sack. Justin Adamiola had another sack. Myron Tungvaloa was flashier in this game than he was last week. Yeah. There are still some issues that this team has on setting the edge in the run game that's going to have to get cleaned up. But they made a lot more plays, I thought, this week. Foskey's got 3 sacks to start the season. Myron made a couple big plays, and he was the one that forced that fumble at the end of the game too, right? Mm-hmm. Wasn't Myron the one that forced that fumble?
JD fell on it, yeah.
So it's good to see him out there.
Always around the ball, JD Bertrand.
He was so good today.
And that one, JD,
can I say something?
When he got that sack, I don't know if that's what you were going to talk about, but when he got that sack and he basically ran over the linebacker.
Blew up the linebacker.
Blew up the running back. My goodness gracious. And still got the sack. I mean, that
JD Bertrand has more tackles in 2 games than either one of your Will linebackers had last year, the whole season. Yeah. He's got more solo tackles in 2 games, and Shane Simon had total tackles in the whole year last year.
That's all you got to say.
That's a problem.
That's all you got to say. We got
because Maris Luafau had 22 tackles last year.
Yeah,
JD's already got 22 tackles.
Stop.
Like if he does it again, and by the time they're done with Wisconsin, he'll have more tackles than Maris and Shane had last year combined. The Will linebacker's a whole lot better now.
Yo, yes.
It's what our sources said this summer, Vince. When I had that update on JD Bertrand before the season even started, I said, "Why is he playing?" It's like, well, he's just always around the ball. But what about he's always around the ball? But how about he's just always around the ball? We're seeing that today. Now, there's a couple things that JD hit. Sure. Had a couple bad run fits this week and last week. Got sealed inside on that quarterback run. Yep. He has to go over top of that. To go over top of that. He can't get blocked like that. So his game isn't completely there yet. But man, he plays hard, and he's athletic. He's downhill, and he's physical. That's what surprised me about him, Vince. He is strong for an undersized guy. I'll tell you what, the Bertrand family has been very good to Notre Dame in 2021 because John Michael was their eighth. Once Tommy Sheehan went down in the spring, who was supposed to be Notre Dame's ace pitcher, John Michael stepped up and became their ace starter.
I forgot about that. I didn't realize they were related.
Yeah,
wow.
They're brothers. And, I mean, he was great in the College World Series. I mean, John Michael was excellent against Mississippi State. And now JD's their leading tackler through 2 games. So the Bertrand family has been very good to Notre Dame. So that's been an encouraging thing. But Drew White's tale of 2 halves the last 2 weeks, Vince, is a little bit concerning to me.
Agreed.
I'm going to be honest with you.
We got a big picture question here from Kevin. It's a super chat. Again, thank you, Kevin. He says, so 2 games in, what's our ceiling? What's our floor? From both perspectives.
Why don't you go ahead and take that one first, Vince?
Well, I still think the offensive line. I still think the ceiling could be 11 wins. I still think that could be the ceiling. And, maybe they get lucky and get a 12th, but that's still the ceiling. The floor for me is what has dropped. Mm-hmm. I think that my floor used to be 10 wins. Honestly, that's where my floor was. Now it's more like 8. And it would be a very, very, very big disappointment for me if that's where they end up hitting.
Mm-hmm.
That would be very disappointing.
But it's more possible than it was.
Yes, that's correct. That's why my floor has dropped. My ceiling's still kind of where it was. It's that razor thin margin of error that we talked about going into this game. It's gotten even thinner because of the play of the offensive line. So my floor has gotten lower. So it's 8 for me.
This is looking more like a 10-2 team than a potential team battling for a playoff position. Now, having said that, when Ohio State won a title in 2014, they got embarrassed at home had a 2-touchdown loss at home to Virginia Tech.
Yeah,
who was a 7-6 team. So who they are in game 2 doesn't mean they have to be who they are moving forward. I will say my ceiling hasn't changed, Vince, and my ceiling was 12-0. The reason I say my ceiling hasn't changed because they're 2-0 and are scoring a lot of points, and their offensive line is playing worse than I could have ever imagined.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still scoring a lot of points.
Right.
There's a chance their offensive line is going to not be terrible moving forward. There's a chance.
Right.
And they don't have to be great for this team to score a ton of points on a lot of people. I also think the defense is going to get cleaned up, but the skill players are everything that I thought they could be.
Yeah.
Jack Cohn is what I thought he was going to be. Tyler Buckner is what I hoped he would be.
Mm-hmm.
And you're still not really getting Kyron Williams rolling yet. And you're still scoring a ton of points.
Yeah.
If this offensive line can get better, and that's a big, big question mark right now, then I think this football team has a chance to still be really good. And again, context matters. The context is as you watch around the college football, and right now, and again, I still want to see what Georgia does against a team because Notre Dame's offensive line was bad. They looked every bit as bad as Clemson's. The difference is Clemson's offensive line looked that bad against Georgia. Notre Dame's offensive line looked that bad against Toledo and Florida State. So that's problematic for me. But when I look at this, Vince, I see a situation where they're going to have to fix a lot if they're going to be able to reach their potential as a program this year. And I'm less optimistic that that's going to happen than I was when the season started.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm with you. A couple more super chats to get to. Mike Hoff says, guys, we don't have the personnel to play 3-4. You need beef up front for that. Know your personnel.
Yeah, I get that, but you also need to have some versatility. You just can't line up in the same 4-down defense all the time, because we saw that last year with Clark Lee, and whenever they would play a team that had better personnel, then they would just be able to generate big plays by knowing where Notre Dame was going to line up. So they did a better job, as Vince said, they did a better job of mixing that up today and using that in there. Look, there's some advantage to that, but let's again, I want to reiterate this. This is still a team in the second game of this defense. They're going to get it's not a surprise that they're better in the looks that they already knew.
Sure. Makes sense. Yeah.
That shouldn't surprise us. Right. Now, I will say this, Mike, in response, I'm more patient with this than you are, but if by the end of the Wisconsin game, you haven't improved with being more effective in the 3 downs, then it's time to say, hey, look, that's just not going to be part of who we are this year.
Right.
At least not in this, as part of our base defense. We'll still doing some nickel stuff and things like that. But we're going to have to scrap it.
When the game was on the line, they were in a forefront. So,
which is important.
I just want to put that out there, because the game was on the line last week. They were in a 3. Game was on the line this week. They were in a 4. So,
which tells me that Marcus Freeman quickly was able to, because again, remember, Marcus Freeman now has 2 real games under his belt with this personnel.
Correct.
He's still learning them too.
Yes, exactly.
They're learning him.
The know your personnel part of this question. He's getting to know his personnel.
Right.
And it's, as somebody mentioned previously, if they're going up against Notre Dame's offensive line every day in practice, he may not have a good read on what his personnel can do right now. And he's getting a better idea of what his personnel can do, if that makes sense. So, it takes time. It takes time to understand what you've got. We got some more to get to.
And that's why I'm a little bit more patient with the defense right now, Vince, than I am the offense.
I do want to address this because nobody has brought it up. Tom A says, poor game attendance is embarrassing, and so was Peacock. It was the most empty I've ever seen that stadium. And I've been
playing like some bad teams late in 2014.
Right. And I have been going to games consistently as a member of the media, quote unquote, since 2004. And I have never seen this stadium as empty as it was outside of a blue gold game, for example, than it was today. I mean, there were wide open sections. And I don't necessarily understand why that was, but it was bad. It was really bad. So I just wanted to address that part of it. And I don't know about the Peacock side of things because I haven't watched it yet. So I'm sure I will tomorrow. But
and I'm wondering if he just means the
fact that it was on Peacock in the first place.
Or if the Peacock service was bad. I'm curious as what that was. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just curious if it's more of a,
because Peacock was having issues, as you had mentioned to me when we were on our way.
That's what I'd heard. I didn't know that, but somebody had posted on our message board before the game that there were some issues about. I guess what Soccer Channel was having some issues and they had to move over to NBC Sports is what he said. I don't know that for a fact. I was just telling you what somebody had said to me.
Yeah. Right. Emerald City Irish hits us with the super chat. Thank you. We got one here from Jay. He says, I can see a good dose of Buckner against Purdue to help neutralize Karlaftis because that kid will be a problem for the O-line next weekend. No doubt.
I mean, I get where you're coming from, but I don't think you can just, again, Purdue's going to have a better game plan for him next week than what Toledo did. Toledo had never seen Tyler Buckner.
Exactly. Right.
Purdue will now have seen him. And again, it's I don't care if it's Tyler Buckner. I don't care if it's Jimmy Clausen, Brady Quinn, Tony Rice. If the offensive line doesn't play better, at the end of the day, it's not going to matter who the quarterback is. Because you're going to have to lose something no matter if you put Jack Cohn in there, you lose something from the run game.
Sure.
If you put Tyler Buckner in there, you're going to lose something from an experience standpoint. You're going to lose something from a pass game standpoint. You just are.
Yeah.
It's going to have to come down to the offensive line, and he is not going to just be able to go neutralize big chunks of the game. It's not going to happen. It's going to come down to the offensive line. They're going to have to play better.
Right.
They're going to have to play better.
Emerald City Irish, thank you again for the super chat. He says, hey, IB, longtime listener, first-time poster. Seemed like Kyle Hamilton played corner on individual receivers more often than a higher safety position. Why? The former feels far less effective than the latter.
You want to touch on that one, Vince? Because we saw that. It was when they were motioning outside. What Notre Dame did, which I actually kind of liked, is instead of having the corner bump out, they just had Kyle run all the way out and cover a guy.
Right.
So they weren't putting him at corner.
It's
I'll
just
say this, they put him in man coverage a lot more than he had, but I think that was more about what Toledo was doing than what what Notre Dame was doing. They were spreading things out. They were doing a lot of motions that were forcing Notre Dame to alter their coverages. And I personally like that. I as an offensive coach, I always wanted you to bump out because I was trying to get you to bump out because I had an inside ISO that I was looking for.
Right.
And so I like that they left their corners inside personally.
And I will say that when I'll pull BK here. I need to look at the film, but what I don't think Kyle Hamilton had an issue when he was in man coverage. He had more issues when they were in zone. And guys, there was one play where the receiver literally got behind Kyle Hamilton, and if he would have kept going straight, it's a touchdown. But he broke off his route and went over the middle, still completed the ball, I think, or it was a bad path. Either way, he was open. But he was letting guys go in more in zone than he was in man-to-man coverage. I feel like that's kind of where he struggled today as opposed to man. But
this was late reacting to routes.
Yeah.
He was flat-footing routes, and that's the same thing Houston did last week, so Chris O'Leary's going to have to clean that up in a hurry.
Absolutely.
It was, again, but that's where I guess I get down to it, Vince, is I know Kyle Hamilton's better than what he showed today. Guys have bad games. It happens. I mean, everybody has bad games. He doesn't have them very often. I'm going to give Kyle Hamilton, as great as he is, a bit of a pass for just having a bad game, and give Toledo some credit for scheming up in some areas that kind of gave him some problems a little bit. Now he's going to have something that, hey, look, Kyle's in the second game of his junior year. Which means today he made his 13th start because didn't he miss a game last year? So he made his 13th career start. Yeah. He's still seeing some things that he hasn't really seen before, and they took advantage of it. So I think that to answer your why, it was a reaction to how Toledo motioned. But honestly, the plays were, like you said, Vince, I was going to go a different route, not so much zone versus man, but the plays where he was getting in trouble today were when he was inside, not outside.
Right. Yep, I agree. And people are commenting that it was COVID as to why it was empty. I'm not an idiot, guys. I understand why. It was just I was disappointed in that.
There's COVID in Florida too, and Florida State was packed.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. And I wonder if Notre Dame's whole, anyway, I don't want to get into that conversation, but it was there. It's COVID's a thing everywhere. And
I was disappointed.
Everybody else is packed. Michigan had way more people at their game today than Notre Dame did. That was just disappointing. I'm sorry.
The Toledo section was packed. Yeah. Right. I mean, all their tickets.
And they had Toledo people kind of all throughout. There's decent number of
Toledo people sitting in front of us. I mean, so anyway, whatever. All right. That we're actually through super chats at the present, which is fantastic. And so I'm at the bottom, and people are talking about Peacock, and I guess people didn't have an issue with it, never froze, etc. That's kind of where the conversation is at the moment. But anyway, how about we continue special teams? There's a special place for Brian Polian in the special teams unit right now, and I want you to kind of talk about that, please.
If you have a coach that is designated to only coach special teams, your special team should be a whole lot better than what Notre Dame's has been in the last two games. And I'm not even talking about the missed 55-yard field goal. No issue with that at all. It was more about the coverage was mediocre. There was one play where it's like they didn't think they were going to return it, so like they weren't running downfield.
Yeah.
There was times they were just engaging guys, just running by dudes. It was a lackluster special teams effort. I don't know what else to say. It was a very lackluster effort. We don't see the normal hustle. Now, part of that is, one of your best special teams players, Jordan Patelho, is not available.
Yeah. Good
we
point.
saw some other guys that have been good special teams players not out there. So, some younger guys getting some opportunities. So, maybe they'll get better. But it was an overall lackluster. I mean, there was a point in time where Toledo was punting from near midfield. You're hardly ever going to be able to return a punt from midfield in today's era. So why not go after it?
Right.
So they didn't set up a return. They didn't go after it. So what are you doing? I mean, to me, if anything, in that situation, there's even more reason for me to go after it for two reasons. One, hey, maybe you block it. Number two, on a short field like that, there's so much more potential in that short area for the ball to bounce into you. Because there's more players down there on a shorter field, right? So from midfield, they're gonna those corner kicks. There's more chance of you guys running down there, blocking people, of it hitting and coming into you. So I want my returner inside the 20, nobody else.
Right.
I'm going after it. And you say, well, you're worried about running into the kicker. Okay, well then teach them better. And so just like little things like that, where it's like, are you guys not even thinking outside the box at all? Are you like not even prepared at all for this? Kyron Williams letting the ball roll. It was just a lackluster special teams effort. Now, look, they came up when they needed to. John Doerr makes a big kick late and all that.
Sure.
They had one kick return where the guy bobbles it and they pinned him deep and all that. But it's like he was like able to pick that thing up and brush it off and shine it up and then go running. They still weren't there yet. It's just like this isn't the unit that we saw last year, right? Yeah. Like and I thought John Doerr's kickoffs were pretty good, and so I was very unimpressed.
Yeah,
very lackluster special teams effort.
Yeah, absolutely. And the coverage teams are something that we've lauded in the past. Yeah. And I haven't seen that.
And they
yet.
had the one return for Tyree, and it's like nobody's really blocked. There was no nothing schemed up, just like not really engaged. Guys running by guys. It just was.
It's like they're anticipating that it's not going to be a return. The blockers. You know what I mean? Like they're anticipating that they're going to let it go into the end zone, and so hey, why block somebody? You know what I mean? Then that's not what you want to see. Not what you want to see. Kevin Dillon with the super chat says, so much more fun breaking down a game after a win.
Could you imagine how this show would have gone if they'd have lost?
I can imagine. And you and I talked about what things might be like if it was going to be that period of time where Toledo scored the touchdown to go ahead before Notre Dame got the ball. It was a TV timeout and everything. You and I are looking at each other like, this is going to be a very interesting post game, and I wonder what things are going to be like a week from now. And then so we talked about what it might be, and it wasn't friendly fire. It wasn't something that I really wanted to talk about. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So it's football. There we go. Got a Chief Brody jumping in with a little super chat. He says Florida State losing to JSU. Is that Jacksonville State potentially? I assume that's who JSU is. But Florida State is losing, so that's terrible. Awesome, great. Doesn't make that Notre Dame win look much better if Florida State ends up losing that game. That's for sure. That is not good in any way. David, I said more fun because I can't say the other one because it didn't sound right. So that's the teacher side of me, and I did teach English for 1 year, so I couldn't say the other one. So yeah, absolutely.
So Vince, can we go back to the top, because I don't want this to be just the people doing super chats.
Agreed.
Get some things. We'll go and find some of these questions.
Yeah.
Where are you at?
All of a sudden my thing won't move at all. There we go. The problem is my top is 856.
Okay, so I'm at 850, so we'll kind of work through some of these. John Zabrowski said, what's wrong with Heinisch and Cross and spring camp? Elston glowed on them both. I don't know what's going on with Kurt Heinisch, but I don't think he's played well the first two games. I wonder if he's still trying to find a comfortable fit in Marcus Freeman's defense and vice versa. I thought Howard Cross did some nice things today. Vince, he had a couple pressures, I thought.
Well, again, Kurt Heinisch he made some plays too. He just made –
he had one in the run game, didn't you say early? Yeah. Like he had a one really good push. Right. Other than that, I just don't think he's really been getting the penetration. So I don't know. Is that is that a nose problem? Like he doesn't. We haven't seen it turned loose or not. We'll have to see the answer to that. But yeah, I have the nose tackle depth chart has not been phenomenal so far in the first couple games.
Agreed. And Howard's getting a lot of PT. He's getting a lot of playing time.
And we didn't. I don't remember seeing much of Riley Mills today. We saw Nana got a lot.
That's a good question. I did not see Riley Mills either.
I wonder if he got hammered for that mistake he had last week that led to that 89-yard touchdown. If maybe they're soured a little bit on him because of that.
They need him in there.
And John Zabrowski said also that J.D. Bertrand got the game ball per Brian Kelly's official Twitter. He deserved the game ball. Yeah. And, we didn't talk a lot about this, but, man, is it nice to have Kevin Austin eligible and playing. And,
Yeah, absolutely.
And there were 4 or 5 other plays where, I mean, the receivers were getting open a lot early in the game. It was nice to see Avery Davis get involved in the pass game today. There was one point in time I was like, so I can't believe that the slot has still yet to catch a pass. And like the very next play, they threw a pass to.
It was the one where it went down the sideline, and it's like, well, ask and you shall receive, buddy. There you go.
Oh, and that's another thing. There was a long pass play that was brought back because of a penalty I think it was on Jarrett Patterson, right? One of the offensive linemen. You have a potentially big penalty. That was the other thing about the offensive line. They had a couple bad penalties that took away big plays.
Yeah. One
was an offside. Remember, it was an offside, and then Jack hit a big play down the field, and then they had a offensive penalty. Just a really sloppy performance by the offensive line. But yeah, JD played very well. Sid Irish, we have enough talent to beat Toledo by more than 3. I don't think there's anyone in this chat that would disagree with that.
Absolutely.
Christopher Daly, I want to address this. He says, is BK so stubborn, stupid, loyal that he'll let the offensive line issue of pathetic coaching go unaddressed? It's not stupid. And I don't like it. I'm going to criticize it. I'm going to hammer him for it. But Brian Kelly's a person with emotions and connections and friendships too.
Sure.
And if you look at the 2 coaches he's had the hardest time seeing their flaws, it's people he's known for decades. And I think all of us, I mean, you look, parents sometimes are the last people to recognize that there's a problem with their kid because it's
no doubt.
Sometimes, not all, but it can happen sometimes. But look, when it's someone you care about beyond just professionally, you're going to have a hard time
seeing the flaws.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I don't think, is he too stubborn and loyal? Yes. I want to get rid of the stupid part of that. And I understand where you're coming from, Christopher, and your frustration, but it's not about stupidity.
Right.
Brian Kelly did not get to where he is right now because he's stupid. Is he too loyal sometimes? Yes. Do I think sometimes it's more than loyalty? And it goes to that he doesn't necessarily make the decisions he needs to make because he wants a certain type of personality on his offensive staff at positions, meaning people that he maybe don't have a pushback mentality. Yeah, I think there's some of that sometimes too.
No doubt.
But at the end of the day, though, what we can both say is, Chris, is that he needs to recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Kelly should have known in 2014 that Brian Van Gorder wasn't the answer. When he couldn't create a top defense with the talent he had in 2015, he definitely should have known then that Brian Van Gorder wasn't the answer. It wasn't until the team imploded in 2016 that he finally had no choice but to let Brian Van Gorder go. I pray that it does not take him that long this time to figure that out.
Absolutely. We do have a super chat that I will get to, and then we will head back to you. So I'll grab that. Mm-hmm. I'll grab that since you're higher than I am. Mm-hmm. David Knight, thank you for the super chat. Says, Brian and Vincenzo, in your coaching days, did you run across guys that maybe when they practiced were not that impressive, but when they had a chance to play, they made the most of that moment? No doubt about it.
All the time.
There were guys. There's 3 categories of guys, right? There's guys that practiced hard, played hard, like that you got your best out of them at all times. Then there was guys that practiced hard and just didn't show up in games, and those guys were maddening. And then you had guys that they were okay.
Half-speed heroes, baby. That's what those guys were.
And then in a game, it's all of a sudden they ball out, and you're like, well, okay. I mean,
practice All-Americans. Yeah, I saw that a lot. The 2 best players I ever coached. One was a great practice player and a great game player. His name was Matt Bernardo. He's my running back at Muhlenberg College. First All-American I ever coached. Great kid, hard worker, great talent, phenomenal player. The next All-American I coached was a year later. It's a receiver named Michael Warfield. I had him at Duquesne. And the year I coached him, Michael had about 53, 54 catches for a little over 1,140 yards and 14 touchdowns in 11 games. Michael was a terrible practice player because and part of it was just because he was a really tightly wound athlete. And I mean physically tightly wound. He could not get loose in practice until like halfway through. And I was always hesitant to push him because I knew that if I push him too hard, he's literally too tight. Physically too tight. He'd have to stop in the middle of practice and get stretched out. But on game day he was fine because the adrenaline of game day would loosen him up and he dominated. Right. All I cared about what Michael did in practice, Michael, just let me make sure that I know you know what you're doing.
Correct.
As long as you're mentally locked in, I don't care if you're dominating practice because I know you're going to dominate on Saturday.
But that's where coaches need to know their guys.
I need to know that you know what to do so that when you're looser and full of juice on Saturday, you're ready to go.
Right.
Another kid I had, a kid named Nathan Davis. He was so up and down as a practice player, a kid that I had at Christopher Newport. But I knew on Saturday Nathan was going to ball. And, I had another kid on that same team, Curfew Spate, who just was the same kid every day, whether it was Monday or not Saturday. Every kid's different. And as you said, Vince, you nailed it. You got to know your kids.
Right.
And that's kind of my issue with Jurkovec and Book is Ian Book's one of the best practice quarterbacks I've ever seen. And I'm not saying that to take a shot at him. It's more of if Ian Book could have done in games, well, we saw him doing some practices.
Sure.
Man. Because, again, I'll say Ian Book had a better arm than Jack Cohn.
Yes.
And quite a bit so, as far as his pure arm strength. But on Saturdays, Ian had a hard time seeing the field, going through reads, and throwing with timing and getting the ball where it needed to go to. It just was. Whereas Phil Jurkovec would maybe look bad in practice, but when it got to game day, he'd ball out. Mm-hmm. And there's guys like that. And you as a coach have to – but it can also be challenging. At what point do you give that who hasn't shown it to me in practice game reps?
Absolutely.
And so, but again, that's where you have to, as a coach, you have to be able to figure that out. You have to be able to identify it. And for me with Michael, it was easy because I could see it and I could see physically he just couldn't get loose, but by the end of some of the, sometimes in fall camp, you'd get to the end of practice when he was loose and he's just crushing people. So you could kind of see it. But when we got to like game weeks, he couldn't ever get loose. Right. It was also all about, hey, let's just get him healthy to Saturday. Right. And we'll dominate.
Got one more super chat, and then we'll head back up to the top. Kevin Dillon says, if we play the exact same game, do we beat Purdue?
No.
I don't think so either.
No, but I don't expect them to play the exact same game. They'll get better. They'll make adjustments, and, no team goes through all that and just doesn't get better. At least no team like Notre Dame. Joseph Balek says, not sure if this was already mentioned. Why didn't Prince Colley play? He was listed on the unavailable note. Correct. We had a note on this on the message board before the game, but he was out for some COVID protocols. Whether I would imagine it was a positive test, but it was. And I'm saying some people answered that question for him in the chat, but I wanted to make sure that other people heard that too. It was a COVID related issue. Let's get to some more questions here. We got another super chat down there, Vince, if you want to pull it while I'm looking for some.
I will do that.
And then I just want to throw this in here just because.
Yeah. It's you can't go wrong.
We never wrong throwing that one in there. So
no, you can't go wrong there. Yeah. S. Grove, thank you very much. He says, Drew White loves getting blocked so much during commercial breaks. He practiced blocking himself.
That's rough.
Ouch.
That's really rough.
You know what? I will pay more attention to Drew White. I shouldn't say more attention. I will pay attention to Drew White when I watch the film again. I don't think he was that bad. He made some plays. I thought
he had some really. He looked way too blockable in the second. That's what I said. Second half is more the issue.
Okay.
And again, I'm going to go back and watch it again, but I did notice that in the second half that he was getting blocked a little bit too many times.
Okay.
And first half, I thought he was pretty good. Second half, I thought it was not great. Senior Francis with his $5 super chat. Thank you. That Kansas State is losing to Southern Illinois in the third quarter, 23-21. They beat Stanford last week. How bad is Stanford? I know that that's not how it works, but still, that ain't good. That's not good. Trying to find the Michigan score right now and see what the score of that game is.
There you go.
They're up 10-0. Okay. There you
John Zabrowski says Chris Fink on Twitter. So that was Mike Bean. He's the head athletic trainer, by the way, who popped Jack Cohn's finger back in before the winning touchdown. Irish breakdown game ball to Mike Bean. Hey man, he got the starting quarterback back on the field. So
did Jack go out? Was that why? Because Tyler came in for a play, didn't he? On the last drive or no? I can't. I have to go back and watch it again.
Yeah,
because I was actually working on my game observations during that drive on my iPad. So I was kind of like going back and forth, between plays. But I don't. He didn't. Yeah, he didn't come in, right? But yeah, but I think from what I couldn't be mishearing Brian Kelly's because I was trying to drive. It sounded like he played some snaps with that dislocated finger.
He may have. I don't think he missed time because of it. I don't know what the order of events were, when that happened. So people that were watching, please help me out here.
Yeah.
Mike Huff says 106,000 people were at Michigan.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I that was, yeah.
And Searcher Green, here we go. He says he didn't come out.
Okay.
Yeah, he said he came in and Clan called him off.
What? Buckner came in and Cone called him off as well.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, thank you. I was like,
L and O are right. L is right behind O on the keypad. So.
I was gonna say this thing took a hard left turn. I don't know where we're going here.
Whoa. Oh, goodness gracious. Fighting Irish says the O-line is what it is. Meanwhile, every team must work with what they have, play fast, get the ball out of Cone's hands in 2-3 seconds, pass into flats, quick outs, options, upset Ds. Here's the problem with that. They did that early, and Toledo said, okay, we're going to come up and play press, and we're not going to let you get rid of the ball in 2-3 seconds. I mean, defense is worth any kind of salt at all, grain of salt at all, are going to be able to say, hey, look, we're not going to let you throw quick anymore.
Yes.
You can do that. That's just a fact. So
it's how Notre Dame played Ian Book.
Yeah. I mean, that's how Wisconsin is going to play.
Notre Dame's opponents played Ian Book.
Wisconsin's going to do that. Purdue's going to do that.
Right.
Since they're just going to say, hey, look, we're going to take your quick game away. We're
Right.
going to take your RPOs away. We're going to take those things away because we're going to make you beast down the field. Look, I get the O-line is what it is. No, it's not, because there's plenty of other players you can try to work in. You can see there are ways you can get the O-line better. The only way I would agree with you and say it is what it is if that's the best that those players can do. We've seen 3 of the starters in the lineup play better than they did today in a Notre Dame uniform.
Yeah.
I mean, if Zeke Correll just played today like he played against Alabama, he'd have been okay. If Josh Lugg would have played today and last week like he did in his 5 starts in 2019, he'd be much better. We obviously know Jared Patterson get better. And again, he's shaking off the rust and all that, but he's going to get better. Josh, but that's the thing is these guys have regressed from where they've been in the past. That's the problem for me. And Kane Madden is worse now than he was at Marshall. And not from an OG, but he played Toledo caliber players at Marshall and was an All-American against that caliber player. Right. It's not like this happened against Wisconsin. You're like, this was the concern. You play up a level. He ain't playing up a level today. He was playing his level, if that's what what he believed him to be. He's regressed. So that's the issue is guys are regressing, which means you got to coach them up, get them back on track. It also means you've got to, if those guys aren't getting it done, you got to try to find somebody else who can. So I don't believe the line is what it is after 2 games. I don't think anybody is what they are after 2 games. And that's Ohio State's not who they are. Ohio State's going to get a lot better than they were today.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just the nature of college football. Some teams are going to get worse than they are early in the season. Rarely do you just kind of stay who you are. You either kind of go up or you go down, and they're going to have to figure out a way to go up, in my opinion.
Right. Senor Francis with the super chat, and then he's got a comment down here, so I'm going to pretend this was the super chat for him. He says, not sure if this was already discussed, but what are your thoughts on Toledo scoring and giving Indy time to make the game-winning drive? My buddy actually texted me this in the middle of the game, and I said, look, man, you're Toledo. If I'm this guy, right, if I'm the quarterback, right, you just fake the out of Notre Dame. You see the end zone. You are at Notre Dame Stadium. You play for Toledo. You're not taking a knee, right before you go into the end zone thinking, hey, man, we got to, knock some time off the clock here. You score, right? I mean, you score. You go ahead, right? Of course, after thinking about it, you're like, okay, maybe they should have run some time off the clock, et cetera. They probably could have iced the game and won it and not given the ball back to Notre Dame.
You got to give your defense a chance to make a stop. Your defense has been playing their butts off all game.
I'm sorry. Going through that kid's head is not, man, I got to run some time off the clock. Right. It's, oh, my God, I'm about to score a touchdown.
You only do that if you don't need to score at all.
Yeah, right.
Like if they already had a lead, and they just needed to run the clock out and not score, he should have definitely taken a knee. But that wasn't the situation. It was there was still enough time left to where you got to get your points. I mean, so many things could go happen. Muff snaps. There's so many things that could have gone wrong if they would have not taken that touch. You got to score. You score. Yeah. You score there. And it maybe would have been different if they were closer because you practice for that sometimes. But no, you don't tell a kid to not score from 30 yards out. No, I just don't think that you do.
And then David Knight says, Vincenzo, that comment you made a couple of days ago made my top 5 of my entire life. It was more than hilarious. Ask Brian about ND game day.
Yeah. So David, he's talking about our little, when the guy was asking you to mess with his kids at Riley.
Oh, yeah.
He had a really interesting suggestion that we should do our own Irish breakdown college game day, where we preview games and do all that kind of stuff. It got me thinking. I don't know if it's something we'll do this year. But definitely got me thinking. So Vince, you and I will talk about that here.
Interesting. Soon. Okay.
Elroy Bubba had and David, thank you for reminding me. Elroy Bubba, do you think they sold out, stopped the run on third down? And I believe he's referring to the Notre Dame touchdown run. Do you think they sold out, stopped the run on third down, and were willing to give up the touchdown? Toledo scoring that touchdown was a saving grace. In some ways, he's right. I mean,
I agree. They gave Notre Dame plenty of time to get the ball.
And Notre Dame gave Toledo too much time to score at the end too.
Very true.
And you can say something like, should Michael Mayer have gone down at the 3? And no, you score.
Right.
But I don't think were they selling out on third down to stop the run? Yes. Were they willing to give up the touchdown? No. I don't think so.
No.
I think they were, however, willing to maybe gamble more, knowing that if they scored, you would have more time. But I don't think they were willing. You're not willing. Plus, Toledo, what was that touchdown from, Vince? How far out was that?
Not very.
I'm gonna trying to look at the game score.
I've got you'll probably find it before I do.
Yeah, I got the thing up. So they scored. It was a 26-yard
26-yarder. I was actually further away than I thought it was.
That's a 40+ yard field goal right there.
Sure.
So Toledo wasn't exactly in gimme territory yet for a field goal. Do I think they were trying to stop the run to say maybe you get a tackle for loss there and now it's a 50-something yard field goal? Sure. But I don't think at the 26-yard line you're like, hey, let them score. And I don't think that's what I was saying. But no, I think they were trying to make a stop, but I don't think they were necessary because Notre Dame also still had a timeout left. So they could have made the stop there and then called timeout and still had time to go.
Right.
Now, if he would have got a first down and not scored, then that could have been a bit more of an issue.
Absolutely. All right, back to the top for you, sir. I'll hang down here at the bottom.
All right.
Apparently, Arkansas is killing Texas.
Yeah, it's 23-7 last I saw.
I'm just in the studio down here. I don't have anything. So
Zach Martin says, making a defense scheme and defend against two wildly different skill sets at quarterback will have its advantages. Cohen is the kind of guy that makes it a non-issue in the QB room. I think that's a really good point by Zach.
Yeah. Kelly actually made that point in the press conference. Yeah.
To a degree.
After
Jack Cohn's not going to be okay rotating every other series, right, Vince?
Right. Absolutely agree with that.
But does he understand?
I wouldn't want to see that either, by the way.
But using Tyler as a change of pace to make light, because if Tyler has the success he does, it's going to make it a little harder to defend Notre Dame, period. Because number one, you can't practice as much on just what Jack does. You got to prepare for what Tyler does. So it's going to take practice time away from what you do with him. I can't wait for the play. And I've been Vince, I'll bet you a steak dinner at some point in time this season. We're going to see Jack Cohn and Tyler Buckner on the field together.
Ooh, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Look, I'd settle for both running backs, which we saw a little bit of today.
Yes.
Both quarterbacks. Now you're trying to blow my mind.
Yeah. But I think Zach's point is really good that this is going to be something that, because Tyler is a dynamic player, this is something teams are going to have to prepare for. And Jack, as long as it's, like when Florida won the national title in 2006 with two quarterbacks, Chris Leak was never felt threatened. For his quarterback starting job was never threatened. Tim Tebow had a very clear role. Right. And Jack, as long as Tyler has a very clear role,
right,
I think it'll be a healthy situation because it's, hey, he's helping us win. I'm still the guy.
Right.
Chris Leak knew game on the line late in the fourth quarter. There's no question about who you're putting in the game.
Absolutely.
Just like Brian Kelly said, there's no question today. And I don't think there was.
He almost laughed at the question, to be honest with you. And he probably should have.
If I would have asked that question, he would have not laughed. He would have rightfully.
It's a bad question. I'm sorry.
Rightfully crushed me.
Yeah, it's a bad question.
Rightfully.
Yes.
No, there was no doubt that you were going to put Jack Cohn in the game.
Right.
At that point.
Right.
There was no doubt. And what a heck of a first down throw, call and throw.
Yeah.
That they had as we talked
it.
about.
Loved it. It's Sam. Just I don't know. I don't know what this means. I don't know what this says, but he says, Coach D, do you think Vince could beat Jack Cohn in the 40-yard dash?
No.
And Sam says, I do. Thanks,
Not
Sam.
now. When Vince was in college, maybe.
I don't think you realize how fast I can go. I'm just saying.
You were walking pretty fast today.
I can get this moving in the right direction pretty good. Just saying. I can still beat my kid.
All right. Jacksonville State's beat Florida State. So.
They're up 7-0, actually. It's not good.
A lot of Peacock comments here.
Yeah, you hit that area. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
See, that's the thing when you have a streaming service is some people are not going to have some issues and other people are going to have
because the internet speeds, period.
Right.
And depending on the coverage and all of that fun stuff. So, yeah.
One guy said they came back late from a commercial but that's not Peacock. That same thing would have happened. Peacock is NBC.
Right.
It would have the same thing. And NBC has done that before.
Right.
That's an NBC problem, not a Peacock problem.
And it's a on the field communication problem because they actually tried to start the game while the guy with the orange gloves was still on the field. He's like, hello, you can't start yet. And they had to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when they came out in 13 personnel? They were out there forever because it was still in commercial.
Right.
Yeah. It was.
But we've seen that with NBC before.
Absolutely.
Like they thought the refs were ready to start to play and they were like, no, we can't, just drove me.
I'm going to ask a question to the ether here to everybody. I haven't seen anybody talk about Drew Brees. I'm curious as to what people's thoughts were on him.
I saw some earlier. No, it was on our message board.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm curious about what people thought about that.
Yeah. Just interested.
I'm trying to get to here. Boy, a lot of and then I think Randall Norris talking about Buckner here. Said he should have had an INT too. Yeah, he almost threw a pick. Braden Lindsey made a really nice play on that. Yes. Coming back to the ball.
We talked about that. Like against a better team, against a Cincinnati, for example.
Yeah, with Ahmed Gardner, that might have been a pick. Yeah.
That's a pick.
But again, that's okay. Tyler's learned. It's the first time he's ever played college football. I mean, for the first time he played college football, he's pretty good.
But again, that's why he's not the starter.
Right.
I mean, he's a good change of pace guy, which is fine. It's totally fine. But that's why he's not your starter. That's why you don't have him in there. Excuse me. That's why you don't have him in there for the game-winning drive.
Mm-hmm.
Just plain and simple.
Yep. Scott McCleary said, did Watts play it all today? He was on the punt.
You noticed him on
coverage team.
Punt coverage. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, and I've never dislocated my finger, but I've heard it's not pleasant.
He must have been adrenaline was flying.
Yes. So he's also a tough kid. I mean, he's he's a New York kid, played in Wisconsin. You got to be a little tough to do that. So dropping dimes, it got dislocated and he popped it in and didn't come out. Yeah, the last couple series kind of bled together a little bit for me.
Yeah.
AJ says, I think this is an 8-4, 9-3 team. I hope that's not regarded as negative, but in my opinion, that's just facts. I don't agree with you, AJ. I don't think they'll be an 8-4 team, but I also am not going to sit there and say you're negative because I understand where you're coming from. Notre Dame played two teams that if we were going to rank the schedule would be in the bottom 6 of the schedule, most likely.
Yeah, right.
And they won by a combined 6 points and had to come back. Well, one it was tied and you went to overtime. The other one you had to come back from being down twice in the fourth quarter. I get it, buddy. I do. I'm not mad at you for thinking that.
Right. Absolutely.
I understand it. And what I would simply say is, I look at it a little differently. We look at it as some coaches and we understand, hey, look, they're going to make some improvements. They're going to get better in some areas, hopefully. But how much better is going to determine whether or not they're an 8-4 team or a 12-0 team. And they're going to have to get a lot better before we start talking about 12-0 again, like a lot better.
Right.
But to be a 10-2 team, 11-1 team, there's a lot of things got to get better, but they're not alone, right? Again, just look around the college football world. Oklahoma almost lost to Tulane at home last week.
Right.
With Tulane has an offensive coordinator that everybody tells me wasn't any good at Notre Dame, right? So all the Notre Dame fans, so many Notre Dame fans tell me, hey, wasn't any good. Players hated them. They just hung up 35 and almost beat Oklahoma, right? So
then they put 69 up today.
It's early. It's early in the season, right? I mean, they're going to get better. Right now, how much better? See, and here's what I mean by that. Here's why my floor has changed. They're gonna get better. The line's gonna get better, but that's not saying a whole lot,
right?
I mean, they could be below average and be better than what they were the last 2 games, and still be below average and still be bad.
Right?
It's how much better.
Right?
That's
exactly.
the question.
Yes,
and that's where my concern of there's a lower floor than I would have said 2 weeks ago has changed, if I'm being honest. They're going to have to get a lot better from what we've seen. Now, what I think this team can be for what this team has been for 2 weeks, big gap. And they're going to have to get a lot better.
No question. No question. And this is funny. This is a 2-parter, okay? Today was Joseph Salvatore says, today was super demoralizing. Stadium looked empty. We played awful, nearly lost the home streak and gave everyone heart attacks. And then a further down, Tom A says, "Hey Salvatore, it's good business for me. I'm a cardiologist."
Nice. Okay.
I thought that
I
was
almost
great.
had like 3 heart attacks and 2 strokes during the game today. At one point in time, I started talking to Vince, and I started like, remember that? I mean, I literally couldn't finish the sentence. I was like, "Am I having a stroke right now? Like, what's going on?"
He's like, "What are you like talking
I just
about?"
start over again because I had like 8 thoughts in my head at one time, and I was like, "I think I'm having a stroke right now." Like, and I'm not even joking. Like, I couldn't verbalize what I was trying to say to Vince. So I don't know what the heck happened at that point in time, but I was like, this heat's getting to me, man.
That was funny.
Brian Dembo said old people are scared of COVID. That's why the game was empty. There's a lot of old people at the game today. Like, a lot of them. So no, they were there, man. They were there. They were ready to rock and roll. John Zabrowski said, if you throw quick, you need wide receivers who break tackling and are yak machines like CeeDee Lamb or Antonio Brown. Yeah, it's nice to have those guys, but with all due respect, Kevin Austin's made some guys miss in the first couple games.
Look, Notre Dame's got receivers to make guys miss.
So can Braden. Yeah, but when you're playing that tight and aggressively, it's a little harder. The reason that the screens work so well for Oklahoma when CeeDee Lamb was there and other receivers, Hollywood Brown and other guys, is because they were so afraid of getting beat down the field. And Oklahoma's had great offensive lines over the years that they'd be willing to give up the quick game. Well, when you are playing off, those screens are beautiful because you have room to get the blocks set up. They don't have room to get the blocks set up because they're playing so tight because and it's not that they're not afraid of Notre Dame's deep ball. I think they are afraid of Notre Dame's deep ball because of what we saw last week. It's more of we don't think their quarterback's going to have time to throw the deep ball because we're crushing their offensive line. I think that's more of what it is. Bless you, Vince. So I think that's more of the issue. We had a super chat down there, Vince. I
we sure do.
Senior Francis has another one, I believe.
Yes, absolutely. He says, how was Chris Ackles, the new PA announcer at ND Stadium? Big shoes replacing Mike Collins. I will say, because I do PA stuff, so I feel like I can talk to this.
Vince is still salty. He didn't get the job.
Shh. And we interviewed him on the show that I do, by the way, and like the whole time I was like, I should have had that job. But anyway, I thought he did a good job. I mean, he wasn't trying to be Mike Collins, which I think was really important. I mean, if he just tried to emulate what Mike Collins was, I'd have been like, come on, man, be you, right? And I think he did. He did a good job. He got some things wrong, but I blame the spotters for that. To be honest with you, I don't think that was his fault. He was good enough. There were times where I thought I kind of wished he was a little bit louder because I couldn't hear him. But that's not his fault.
But you got to know that Brian Koback's not going off sides on defense.
Exactly. Agreed. And that's what you're studying.
You got to know. It's not like if it was just on like second string receiver or second string DN, but that's their leading flipping rusher. You got to know that he's not jumping off sides on defense.
Like his spotter told him that, but you got to. It has to hit a wall at some point and be like, wait a minute, that's not right. But he did fine.
I didn't pay attention. I don't pay attention
because I listen to that kind of stuff. Like, so yes.
So D-Rock just sent me the situation with Cone, and it just hit me. He ran over to the sideline. They popped his finger back in, and he ran back out and threw the touchdown pass to Michael Mayer.
Yeah,
just like
wow. That's a
and
dude
got
being
drilled
a dude.
On that touchdown pass,
right?
Or, I mean, on the play where he dislocated his finger. I mean, So
that's when he got hurt. Remember, I said he got drilled.
Yeah,
gotcha. That makes sense. That makes
sense. You said Jack Cone got rocked. That's what you said.
Yeah, he did too.
And then that very next play comes out and throws a game-winning touchdown pass. That's some big-time ball right there.
Right.
We talked about the winning drive. Man, I'm trying to get back out here. A lot of comments. Love all the Searcher Green. You couldn't. Sorry. Regression you.
I mean, he's talking about, and I think somebody else said they were talking about the quarterback position when that's what that's referring to.
And Jay makes the comment, Lugg should be blowing Toledo defenders off their feet. He's a fifth-year senior. He's a 6'7.5", 310 pounds, fifth-year senior. Yeah, he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. Madden the same. Absolutely right. And that's what kind of ticked me off about Brian Kelly's. This is a young line. No, it's not. You got a 6th-year senior and a 5th-year senior on the right side of the line, and a senior who's a 3-year starter at center. You should be dominant from center to right tackle. I'm sorry, you should. Now, if you're saying, hey, look, we're struggling with the left side, and I would actually buy that. If it was just the left side that was struggling, and hey, look, we got to figure that out. We're going to have to help tight end. And that's kind of what we may see this year, because you had Carell and you had Blake Fisher, and you thought, maybe they are going to have some issues on the left side. But your whole line is struggling. A senior, a 3-year starting senior is struggling.
Right.
A 6th-year senior with 30-plus career starts at right guard is struggling. Yes. A right tackle who's a 5th-year senior who now has double-digit starts in his career is struggling. That's not a young guy problem, and that's what concerns me about Brian Kelly's comments, because it sounds very much like the excuses he's made in the past for the defense when Van Gorder was here, when Ian Book didn't play well. Like, you have to be able to say, hey, look, we got to play better. Like, I don't understand why this is hard for him. Hey, look, we have a tradition here of excellence along the offensive line, and it's not acceptable the way we're playing right now. And if we're going to be the team that we're capable of, we're going to have to play better. Give them that challenge. That's what Nick Saban does. That's what Urban Meyer does. And the only time Brian Kelly's ever criticized his offensive line was last year when he was talking about the 2019 offensive line that he made excuses for every week. And then it wasn't until they were playing great that he was like, well, last year was a disappointment. This year we're playing great. Right. Well, how about last year when you got annoyed every time we'd ask him how bad the offensive line was? I don't understand why he plays these games, because – and the reason I think it's important, people say, well, it doesn't matter. It does matter to me, because let me tell you something. You want to hurt the pride of a college football player, call him out publicly. Call him out publicly. And you're going to see what kind of guy he is. Is he going to respond, or is he going to say, I'm coach, hurt my feelings, call me out? I want the guy that's going to respond.
Exactly.
But I also want to know that this other guy is going to get in his feelings. Because if he's going to do that because I called him out publicly, then that's not a guy I win with. I got to find somebody else. If you walk in my office after you played like crap and you're mad at me because I told everybody you played like crap, hey, man, millions of people just watched you play like crap. Nobody,
exactly.
Right?
It's not a secret.
If he's going to be in his feelings about that, then you know what? We got to find somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
He should go out there and say, Zeke Correll's garbage. That's not what I'm talking about. I don't even care if he names a single player by name.
Like
that would be inappropriate.
Yeah,
that'd be like, hey, man, but if you said, hey, look, Zeke's got to play better. Zeke's a talented kid who's got some starts under his belt. Zeke's got to play better. You know what? Zeke needs to take that as a challenge to play better. Caden Madden's a preseason All-American. If you wanted to call him out, that's fine. But I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about them as a group.
Yeah.
Call them out.
O-line needs to be better.
Do that.
And you can say it this way, too. You could be like, hey, O-line needs to be better, and we need to coach them better.
Yeah.
Say we.
Yeah.
It's your staff. Right. But I would be fine. I would be fine with that, because what's the 8-step process, right? You understand that you have a problem. You admit you have a problem first before you can fix it. Admit you have a problem, right? They need to play better. We need to coach better. That's our priority right now. Mm-hmm. That's okay to say, because it's true.
Yeah.
I got one here. Mag official music. Buckner is an 18-year-old kid. He's our future. I don't know if he's ready to be a full-time starter now. Change of pace will be a perfect role for him and give him some game time experience. Bingo.
Nailed it. And now that may change in November.
Sure. But right now.
Right.
This is it.
Right.
This is it. Oh, and we had a super chat that I should pull up.
Yeah, that'll hopefully give me time.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to find it now. Here it is from Robert Jaworski. Says, did you guys see when the ref kicked the cheaters off and when Kelly was getting his crew to carry the Toledo player off? I missed. I don't know what the cheaters.
Yeah.
Can you, Robert? You don't have to give us another super chat, but
Yes.
just put in there
Yeah.
what you meant by that, because I'm not sure, to be
So
honest.
I want to make sure that we're clear on that. If you ever give us a question, whether it's a super chat or not, but especially if you give us a super chat and we don't understand your question and we ask you to give it again, please do not take that as
give us more money.
You got to give us another super. No,
at all.
Do it normally.
Yes.
Just a normal chat, because we want to make sure that we address the question specifically.
Absolutely.
And so I don't know when they kicked the cheaters off and when Kelly was getting his crew to carry the Toledo player off.
Just need some clarification. Yeah. That's
At that point in time in the game, when Toledo's starting to have guys go down with cramps and stuff,
right?
In between plays, I was on my iPad typing up stories,
right? And I didn't
see a lot of that,
and I didn't see that either. But again, I wasn't watching the TV copy either, and sometimes you can get some more personal stuff when you're watching the TV copy. Jonathan says, went to the game, sat in the Toledo section because my girlfriend goes to Toledo. Ouch. Didn't have a great time during the game.
I bet not.
I'm sure you didn't. I have no doubt.
33-14 Arkansas right now. Texas just now scored to make it 33-14.
That's embarrassing.
Yes.
I'm sorry. That's embarrassing.
Yes.
It's Chief Brody says go ahead.
I had to get that in.
Sorry. Sweet. Love that.
Can I get one more in before you go back to Chief Brody? He taught me. Chances Texas withdraws their SEC move after today.
or chances that the SEC withdraws Texas.
Hey, we want Texas Tech instead.
Yeah.
They're more competitive.
Chief Brody says Miami's in a dogfight with App State. Woof.
Which, to App State's got the ball 4th and 8. They're getting ready to punt, it looks like, but they're down 2 with 11.5 left in that game.
Searcher Green says everyone looks mortal except Bama. I hate this season already.
Yes. I just saw the sprint one. That's where I'm at. Is could you beat him in a sprint?
Okay. I tell you what, we can get some NIL money. I think we need to. Make that happen. Me and Jack. I'll get a little training in beforehand.
Mm-hmm. That's not happening.
I know.
That's not happening.
He's got longer legs than me. He already cheated. This is funny. Senior Francis says it's going to take the Indiana National Guard to have any heat put on Jeff Quinn by Brian Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it. Now, look, let me say this. I do think Brian Kelly is probably going to have –
say something.
I don't think Brian Kelly looks at the offensive line play and truly believes that it was fine.
Sure.
He's just not going to say
he just doesn't want to throw his buddy under the bus.
And he's not going to say it he's not going to issue the public challenges that I think can help you really find out who you got on the offensive line.
Right.
I don't think Brian Kelly thinks the line played great. I think he's definitely going to think they were bad after he watches the film and after he talks to Tommy Rees.
Sure.
Now, what he does about it, we'll find out.
Sure.
But he has to do something. I mean, he can't. And I can live with him not saying something publicly as long as he's doing whatever you need to do behind. That's some different comments on Drew Brees, Vince. You asked everybody.
I read them all.
Searcher Green was a robot. Chief Brody said he was okay. David Knight liked Drew Brees. Dropping Dime says, I love Drew Brees better than Flutie. And if your comparison is to Flutie, I don't see how he could have been bad. John Burke says he was bad. He was good, excuse me. So that's where the thoughts were on Drew Brees, Vince. Most people
somebody in there said we were losing. I wasn't paying attention. Which I get that too.
Yeah.
Believe me.
Yeah, that's not saying much.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not setting the bar very high.
Yep. Zachary Ryan thought he was great. Bill S. Campbell thought he did a good job. Sid Irish thinks he's better than Dougie Doug. It's actually a real person.
Yes, it is.
So S. Grove Drew is an upgrade from Dougie, but that may not be saying much.
Bingo.
Sam Terrell thought he was good. So there's a lot of people thought Drew Brees was good.
Somebody thought he was better than Tony Dungy.
Oh wow, really? Okay.
That's praise in my opinion. So
Alan English liked Drew Brees. I'd be curious if anybody else feels this. He said Drew Brees obviously hates Notre Dame, but his knowledge of the game is very enjoyable to listen to. I'd be curious if anybody else thought that, because I know some Notre Dame fans, and Nolan, I'm not saying you're this way. I'm just maybe you are, and it's kind of funny. It's not a negative, but like there's some Notre Dame fans that think every announcer that's not a Notre Dame graduate hates Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Was that the case, or what? Because like sometimes you listen to an announcer and you're like, this guy doesn't like Notre Dame, and it's obvious. Like,
right.
I don't think Greg McElroy likes Notre Dame. And I don't have to have listened to last week's game, which I didn't, to know that. I've heard him talk about Notre Dame, and it's clear he doesn't like Notre Dame.
Right.
So, yeah. Here's one, Vince. Let's get back some questions here. AJ's got two. He says, I don't want to sound like a bench cone guy, but is there any part of you that feels starting Buckner could be the right call going forward? The O-line cannot pass protect, and Cone is not a runner. Buckner can open up the offense, and this team can plan for the future. I feel this team is 9-3 at the best.
There's a lot there.
There's a lot there. Look, no, I don't think that's the case because, again, this is a game. It's kind of like we've seen this in the NFL in the past where a guy would come off the bench. Remember Scott Mitchell came off the bench when Dan Marino got hurt one year, played like a few games, and played well in a few games, and then the Lions gave him this big contract, and then you realize, oh, that's why he was a backup quarterback. They didn't have any film on him. And then when he became the Lions starting quarterback and you got film on him, you realized he sucks, right, for the NFL.
Right.
And we're not saying this all the time.
Sucks,
yeah, right. No, I'm talking about
yeah.
that specific situation. Everybody knows I think Tyler Buckner's great. The point is it's going to – Arkansas just scored. It's now 40-14. Sorry. I'm doing it. The point is that it's you have to understand there was no film on Tyler Buckner for Toledo, and I thought they used him perfectly. Making him the starter is now going to expose the fact that, as someone else said earlier, he's an 18-year-old kid who's played one game of college football and hadn't played football since 2019 before that.
And 1 year of high school football, by the way.
Give it time. And this is what's going to happen. If Jack Cohn's not perfect, Tyler comes in, plays 10, 12 plays, and he looks great. Bench Jack Cohn. And I get it. I understand it. But this is exactly why I said during the offseason they need a package for Tyler Buckner because he's dynamic.
And we've been saying that.
But so what we saw Saturday is what Vince and I have been saying for months that they should do.
Yes.
And I'm fired up they did it. I really am. I'm happy they did it. We didn't talk enough about that. I'm thrilled that they did it. But we also knew that as soon as Tyler made plays, like, well, we know what the conversation is going to be like.
Oh, yeah. I leaned over and I said that to you.
Yeah, he absolutely. That's why I said, like, we said that. And I had to tell Vit, like, dude, stop talking to your buddy because you can't watch the game because this guy keeps arguing with you about, Tyler Buckner, Jack Cohn. And it's like, I knew it was going to happen. And I'm actually kind of glad we're having this conversation because it means Tyler Buckner played well.
Absolutely.
That's a good thing.
Right.
But he's not the starter. Right? He's not ready to be that guy. Could he be that guy in October or November? Maybe. And if he does, that's a great sign because that means he's going to learn it a little faster than I thought.
Yeah, that means his knowledge of everything has escalated quickly.
Right. But he's just not there yet. And we need to enjoy where he is.
Absolutely.
And again, the offensive line being what it is not going to be able to protect Tyler Buckner for 60 minutes.
Nope.
He as a change of pace against a team. Here's the thing. Here's a football example. Toledo had, just like Florida State, had no respect for the backside of the Notre Dame offensive line when Jack Cohn was in at quarterback. So they were just crashing. Well, then they put they put Buckner in as a change of pace. Buckner exposes that. Well, when you're playing a team and he's your only quarterback, they're going to have a plan for that. It's no longer a change of pace anymore.
Right, exactly.
That's who he is. What they're going to do is they're going to say, we're going to rush 4, drop 7, and make sure that Tyler can't take off running. We're to make him sit in the pocket and beat us with his mind. And then it's like he's going to make mistakes and because he's an 18-year-old freshman who's not quite ready yet. Now, are there going to be some times when Notre Dame's going to need to let him drop back and throw? Yes. Absolutely. And how he handles himself, right? Because eventually teams are going to figure out, okay, he's going to be a perimeter RPO guy, and they're going to have a plan for him. Mm-hmm. And then it's up to Tommy Rees to have a counter to that. Right. And that's where Tommy Rees is going to continue to show us his chops is to, hey, look, this is what we did with Buckner. Because part of being a play caller is anticipating what they're going to do to what you're doing. They say, look, they got film with Tyler now. So what are some things we're going to do to now make sure that they can't just, when he's in there, just this is what they do. Because the other thing is when Tyler goes in a game, if he's just running read zones and bootlegs, I'm having a Tyler Buckner package ready to go. When 12 runs in the game, you all go in the game. Right. Right. Absolutely. So, and so they got to have a counter to that. That's going to be my big thing. And so again, I like the combination of the two, as long as they both know their role.
Absolutely.
That's going to be the key. As long as they both know their role, Jack's a starter. Tyler, you're a change of pace guy. Jack, you understand that. Tyler, you understand that. And then there comes a point in time where it's just like, look, this is just working better with Tyler. He's picked up the offense. He can make the checks. He can make.
Then you make the
change.
change.
That's the other thing is if the offensive line is struggling as much as it is, do you want a freshman quarterback that can't see all the checks and those type of things happen? I don't know if that's necessarily the case. So Vince, let's work through some more of these questions because we've got a lot of work we got to get to tonight.
Absolutely. So John says, because it connects with what we were just saying. So excited for Buckner, brought so much energy to the offense. Kid looks like he could be a star, passed the eye test today for sure. He passed the eye test for where I think Tyler Buckner is right now. Could not agree more.
Yes.
He did bring energy to the offense, and he brought energy to the stadium. All those things are accurate. He played his role perfectly.
Yeah.
That's all I want from him right now.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Randall Norris says, appreciate y'all pronouncing my name correctly. I'm glad because we get that wrong a lot. So I'm
no doubt.
I'm glad we got it right.
We have a super chat here that I got to grab.
William Perry says Tyler's not ready. Not for the full-time job.
He's ready for this role, though.
Not yet.
He absolutely is ready.
Because what I don't want to see, too, is Tyler's going to go in there and make a mistake and take a sack or throw a pick, and it's like, oh, why'd you put him? I mean, I get that's how it is with some people.
Yeah.
This is his role, and he's good at it. And then as he masters this, then you put a little bit more on him, And then by the time they play Ohio – because this is the great thing. By the time they play Ohio State next year, Tyler Buckner is going to have well over 100 – if they keep doing this, well over 100 real game on the line snaps.
Right.
That's going to be great.
Yep.
That's going to be great.
We kind of Chris Moss, maybe. Chris Moss, thank you for the super chat. He says, what changes are you making for improvement to the O-line? We kind of talked about this earlier. I'll let you summarize, kind of what we were talking about.
I think and Chris, this is a good question. I think one thing they have to look at personnel changes. I think Rocco Spindler, much like Tyler Buckner, is too good not to at least let's see what he can do, right? He's got to work him in. If you want to go every third series with Zeke Correll or Kane Madden, whoever you think is playing the worst right now, then you need to do that. I think you need to consider your tackle situation. Does that mean putting Andrew Kristofic at right tackle, moving Josh Lugg to left tackle? Does that mean putting Andrew Kristofic at left tackle? Does that mean, honestly, what I would do, another thing I would do that Vince has kind of hit me is I'd take their offensive line GA, who has got some experience coaching offensive lines. He was at Wake Forest. I'd say, look, man, you've got one job. Get Tosh Baker ready to play. That's it. You're not coaching. You're not doing scout team anymore. I'm going to have one of my analysts do that. I'm going to have somebody else do that. I'm going to have one of my injured players go down and show the scout team cards. I don't care what it is. You got one job. Get Tosh Baker ready to play. And that's it.
Right.
I mean, because Tosh is a talented kid. He's not technically ready to play. That's your guy, Jeff. Don't you teach Josh. Don't you worry about Tosh Baker, right? That's Trevor's guy.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now I'm exaggerating and being a bit hyperbolic, but you get the point.
No, right.
Because Tosh is talented. And if you can get Tosh ready to go, then you're going to have your left tackle situation ready to go. And then I'd consider, okay, well, if let's just say Tosh gets going and he's playing great, do you consider maybe when Blake Fisher comes back, you put him at left guard? Do you put him at right tackle and put Josh Lugg at guard? Everything's on the table right now.
I think the biggest thing is they need to be flexible, and I'm not sure they are. So
that's the personnel thing.
Right.
The other part is a coaching thing. And number one, Jeff Quinn's got to do a much better job getting in the film room. The one thing I've heard from Notre Dame players and sources since he took over is he does a bad job getting them prepared for what they're going to see on Saturdays.
Right. And we talked about that.
We've talked about it for years.
Yeah.
When Alex Bars got hurt in 2018, Alex Bars literally is the person. He was already doing it when he was playing, but he took it even more. When he got hurt, he was the one working the players through the film preparation.
Watching film.
I wasn't told that by Alex Bars or a source close to Alex Bars. I was told that by other players. Same thing happened when Robert Hainsey and Tommy Kramer got hurt in 2019.
That's a huge problem.
You know who led him through film last year? This is just, hey, look, I'm just telling you what I've been told by a source, and I've never heard anyone tell me otherwise. Like, this is the only story I've ever heard. Chris Watt's the guy that led them to preparation film of the opponents last year. Chris Watt was. Well, now we're back to where it's just Jeff Quinn, and they look totally unprepared for what teams are throwing at them. Right. Totally unprepared. So he's going to have to figure something out. Brian Kelly's going to have to figure that out, whether it's going to have to be Tommy Reese watching film with him, whether it's going to be the GA, whether it's going to be Brian Kelly. I don't know who it is, but they're going to have to do a better job of preparing them for what they're doing. The other thing, too, is if I'm Brian Kelly, it's going to be me, it's going to be Jeff Quinn, it's going to be Tommy Reese, it's going to be the offensive line GA sitting down in a meeting this week.
Yep.
And I'm going to sit there and say to him, listen, I understand we got 4 guys playing new positions and we got this and we got the other thing. I said, I can live with some of the mistakes we're making. We'll clean that stuff up.
Sure.
But if your linemen do not come out in this next game and beat the ever-living snot out of the team they're playing physically, you will be looking for a new job at the end of the season. I mean, he needs to have that kind of heart. Look, if you don't fix this, you're going to be looking. I mean, that happens to coaching all the time.
Sure.
And it needs to happen here because what we've seen the first 2 games is you can't coach here anymore bad. It just is. And if you don't get this fixed, so if we don't play physical, and it's not going to be you out there cussing at the players and taking out, it's going to be you are going to go get them ready to play. And if you don't do that, then we're going to have to find somebody else that can.
Yep.
And I would call the guy down in New Orleans and hire him in this. I mean, I really would. But we're not there yet.
Yeah.
Jeff Quinn needs to get it fixed. Coach Trevor needs to get. I think that's the name of the GA. You need to get it fixed because I can live with technical mistakes. I can live with assignment mistakes. I can't live with offensive linemen in Notre Dame getting their butts whooped physically by freaking Toledo. And this isn't disrespect to the kids at Toledo, Vince. It's they're at Toledo for a reason, right? And they're tough kids, and I'll tell you what, those kids at Toledo played their butts off today, but they're still at Toledo. Not many of those kids are going to be getting drafted.
Yeah,
none of that stuff.
Right.
None of that stuff.
Right. And Kevin actually, he says, hey, Toledo's D was pretty awesome today. They played above their skis. They played.
They were awesome as it was about Notre Dame made them look good.
I agree.
Where I would say he's right, Vince, and tell me if you agree. They aren't awesome. They played their butts off.
Yes.
That part was awesome. But
Right.
Notre Dame made them look awesome from a playmaking standpoint because of how bad the line was.
I agree. And just like Florida State played with high energy, they played hard, and Notre Dame made them look even better. But they did bring the energy. Look, Toledo brought more energy than the front of Notre Dame's offense.
That's the same thing that you said after last week's game.
Yeah, and that's what I saw again. And that's a problem.
That's a big problem.
Energy has nothing to do with talent.
No.
At all.
No.
That's my that's my issue. I don't care how good you are. You can still bring energy and toughness to a game.
Yes. And hey, that's going to have to do it, folks, because I've got stories I have to publish from Mike and Grant that they sent over to me. I appreciate everybody.
Guys. This is awesome.
Yes, this is a lot of fun.
I just texted Brian. We could do this all night because you guys stick around with us and have great conversation. And it's unbelievable. I wish we could do it all night. I've got my 9-year-old right off camera, Daddy, please.
I've got some stories I got to publish. But hey, appreciate y'all so very much.
Absolutely.
We will be back tomorrow night. Make sure you've hit the notification bell so that you know when we are going to go live. And Kevin Greenman, appreciate that very, very, very much. But you'll know when we're going to go live tomorrow. Vince and I'll kind of figure it out when we're because part of it's when can we get through film? We've got church and all that kind of stuff.
And look, if we're being completely honest, I'm coaching a baseball camp and we play every Sunday, and so it really depends on what time I get home.
So we'll try to give you an hour or two notice at least, but it'll be at least 6 or later tomorrow.
Oh,
probably closer to 7 or 8. Most likely.
No question.
Where we'll get in the film and we'll have some more things to say. We won't rehash the stuff we already talked today, so we're not going to talk a lot about the quarterback thing. We may talk about some specific plays. This will be more so, hey, App State just went up 23-22 on Michigan. So anyway, or excuse me, on Miami. I'm on Miami.
Oh, all right.
So anyway, appreciate y'all very much for being with us today. Notre Dame, hey, look, a lot to improve upon. Notre Dame's 2-0.
Right.
They're 2-0. And that's the important thing. Now they got to get some cleaned up stuff. If they want to keep that 0 on the right side, they gotta get better. And that's what football's all about, right? Great coaches, you get better each week. And now there's a gut check time now that they gotta work through on both sides of the ball. And if they're able to do that, then then we're gonna look back at this kind of like Ohio State fans looked at Virginia Tech 2-touchdown loss in 2014. Hey, these tough times made you this team that you became. And if they don't do it, then we're going to see some L's get caught by some of these teams moving forward. So what they do moving forward in making those changes and those corrections is going to determine whether they can right the ship and keep getting these dubs, or if they're going to eventually, because again, they're going to play a lot better teams than what they played the first 2 weeks.
No question.
And that's where we're going to be. So for Vince, where's he at? Over here. For Vince, I'm Brian. Appreciate y'all very, very much. Have a great rest of your night. Enjoy college football, and we'll see all of you again back on Sunday tomorrow night. And then, of course, we'll be back to our 12:30 Monday shows. And I'll actually be here this Monday, so I don't have to travel this week. So anyway, so Vince, is this true, Vince?
I'm not annoyed. No, come on, Cameron.
We get some trolls in this thing, man. I tell you what, it's hilarious.
Look, I'm hungry. I want dinner. It's 10 o'clock at night. I'm ready for some dinner. I'm not going to lie to you. We haven't eaten
since we had Culver's before the show, before the game.
I'm ready to eat.
Yeah. So anyway, everybody have a great rest of your night, and we will talk to you again very, very soon.